How are we getting on, folks? What is the crack? Just checking just to make sure that microphone's on because I normally have it turned off. What is happening? How's everybody's Wednesday getting on? I have been sick as a dog all fucking week. And you can still kind of hear me now. And today's the first day I'm kind of feeling a little bit normal. Thank you very much for checking on. And gonna see if I played some more Resident Evil 5 with Hooke tonight. Now, we got a good bit on it last week. And I reckon so that... Oh, Mackenzie's the first one to try out the new alert widget. Oh, there he goes. Through RPD. Mackenzie, thank you very much for the sub. 31 months. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. Welcome, man. So I worked on that one because I had a Final Fantasy alert widget, and I kind of thought, I'm playing a lot of Resident Evil and horror games and stuff, so why not change it up? GR, welcome on Gunbreaker, my favorite class in Final Fantasy 14. But,
do it, lady.
Do it, lady. But I reckon we're very close to finishing it, and he's ready now at the moment. So I'm going to cut over this scene now, Hooke. Jesus, he didn't spend much time talking at all. What is the crack? How are you getting on? I was talking about how far we were in the game. I wasn't slagging you off. And although you made me panic today. You text me. Yeah. I'm sitting there going, oh fuck, it's how
7 minutes.
I ran around.
7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
Doing dishes, hoovering until you text me back saying you were just looking for me to sign on to the PC to do something. I was like, you fucker. The house is spotless, you cunt. That's why I look so angry and knackered. Why is? I don't Hooke, you're not coming through on mine for some weird reason. I did. Oh, let me see. That's good. Hold on. Maybe that's what it is. Well, 1 second, I get this fixed. Discord. Device. Discord. Why are you not coming through? See, the problem is it goes through Wavelink, and... It's not picking up. Discord's problem. Discord's the issue. Yeah. Oh, but then again, if I can hear you, where am I hearing you from?
We need to sort it out.
Right, what about
there he is. Bonjour.
Yeah, we can hear.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
Sorted.
Can you hear me now?
It's when I got the new earphones, it changed Discord over to the earphones rather than the output.
Of course.
Sorry, folks.
There we go.
Technical error. See, I could hear you the whole time anyway, so I didn't think there was an issue.
Yeah, that's true, you know. And when you're testing it offline, you don't know.
No.
Because we were coming through in OBS and you're like, ah, sweet. Sounds good.
Coming through ground.
That's your fault, not mine. You choose your family over me last weekend. Actually, you're right. But actually, the weekend before was Leoric's fault. So,
well, what was my fault?
Oh, my wife's coming home. I can't know. I haven't seen my wife in ages. I miss her. Can't go to the cinema. You know. And then last weekend I was away with my family.
I'm sorry. That seems like a perfectly logical. Go on. Call Mrs. Hooke in and see what she says about that. See if she thinks it's a good reason.
Me, definitely, no doubt about that in my mind.
Would she turn around and say, "Oh, I know. You should have just went on and played games rather than spend time with your wife"? Let's see what yours has to say about it.
Nah, it's alright. Look, is that a TV VCR combo behind your head? Steam Train? It sure is. 14 inches of absolute beauty. That's all you need. 14 inches, plenty.
The arc has nothing to do with us not seeing each other. I think I'm part of the problem now at the moment. But it's soon to end in July, so that'll be good.
How dare you, McKins? How dare you? I mean, you might be right again. But how dare you?
It's like the Monday night gaming nights that the lads had all set up, and you were the problem. And
not always. Not
Twice.
always. That's not fair.
Twice we made the mistake of letting you host the game, and then the next week we're like, oh, we
Here-
can't play this now.
I rectified that, didn't I?
You
exported it.
You rectified it.
The only issue here is a skill issue of Fuming Night. So I've done my research, and I know I'm going to beat Fume Night on Sunday, or Fume Night on Sunday night. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And you know what? Chap was right. Chap were telling me that night, use the rapier because it's fast and you can get loads of attacks off. They're right. I didn't listen. So,
Hey,
that's all me.
I was chatting earlier on about games.
What?
Stellar Blade's good, man.
Is it? I
very good.
seen Burton play it.
Yeah. It's
Mm.
it's easy. It's easy. That's the only thing I don't like about it. It doesn't. There's no punishment
Right.
for dying. You don't lose souls or anything.
Right, okay.
But
It's kind of that loop of Souls games that gets you addicted. Like the dying and losing all your shit, and then you finally beat the boss. And you're like,
Oh,
like
speak of the devil,
that's
there
what
he
gets
is.
you.
Burton,
There he is.
What is happening?
Burton. That was it. What's happening, Burton? Stellar Blade, Flemish. Stellar Blade. How are we all doing, guys? Ready to have several minutes to spare? Of course. Don't even need 7.
What game was this? Stellar Blade. So I kept getting videos recommended on YouTube for it, and I was all, I might give this a go. This looks good. And it plays a lot like Kazan, and I was like, oh. But the only issue is there's no, it's not very difficult, and it doesn't punish you for dying.
We were chatting about it in Sped's stream last night.
Mm-hmm.
Nice guy, by the way.
Yeah, sound.
Stellar Blade, I seen the ending one time in Burton's stream, and I was like, what is going on?
I've been playing that game since yesterday, and I've been seeing a lot of the end. The shiny
that's true.
end.
That's true. In HD.
Is he
shared hype train? Didn't even know that was a thing.
My God.
Thank you very much, folks. Shared hype train.
You have very little time. You have family and kids. So I work around your schedule. 3 a.m. That's when we're going. 3 a.m. Jiggle physics.
That's good.
Yeah, I know. I've been trying to pick the most inoffensive output as I can in that game.
Burton, that's not nice. He had nothing but nice things to say about you, right? Didn't even call you bald or fat or anything like that. Even though he redeems it in your chat all the time. He was lovely.
Why am I taking friendly fire
here? It's not friendly. What are you talking about?
Jesus.
Jiggle physics McAnime, yes. Teddy, what's happening? Good evening. That was AI too. Never mind. That was him. Yep. I didn't know Speds streamed until last night. Had no idea. Really mentioned it just, and I was like, oh, does AI? So I stopped by then.
Do you know me and Burton have a special relationship now?
I'm not surprised, but go on.
We now constantly send each other messages of when we catch Flimosh in people's chats talking about how much he loves Resident Evil 6.
Have you receipts?
Yeah, oh yeah, they're great.
Yeah. Soon, Flemish, soon we'll be playing your favorite game of all time. Soon.
He's my best mate's IRL brother, spot on fella. There we go. The truth comes out.
Right, okay. He has a young whippersnapper though, isn't he? He's like 20 something.
McKins, thank you very much for the £15 donation. I appreciate it, brother. I found it as well. Made time and all.
Have you heard of the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV? With an expanded free trial, which you can play through the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heaven's Ward, Stormblood and Shadowbringers expansions up to level 80 for free with no restrictions on playtime.
Don't be saying sorry about your time. It's a relay for life, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's like a 24-hour thing, but we're broken up the sections, and I got my time for Saturday.
Right. So what's your time?
I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to announce it on the internet. Jesus, stalks myself. I'm not.
Oh, well, you can tell me, I suppose, offline now. Are you doing it here?
I'm here.
Like, near me?
Yeah.
In Vig? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I know where it is. Okay, fair enough. That's a good point. Cancel Flemish. Here, Tomahawk. Repping the day.
24. I still being breastfed. Oops.
24.
Jesus,
what was I doing at 24?
10 months. 10 months, hey. Were you not in... I keep saying Blackpool, but it wasn't Blackpool.
Brighton, you're right. I was.
Brighton.
2015.
You're in Blackpool?
Blackpool. I've been to Blackpool, like. But no, I was in Brighton. Lovely city, by the way.
I know where it is. Let me know. No, Teddy. No, don't be doing it. I'm no longer sub to you because I didn't get my new card changed over in time for the new. It won't let me do it now. But you have it disabled. It's only for this week, so they have the charity thing set up rather than subs.
You can still sub, can you not? Is it not a drop?
You can, but there's no need to. There's no need to just call in and chat.
No, I know what now.
Just chat.
But like, that's I'm just saying, like, it is still possible. There's a drop down beside the charity thing where you can choose to sub instead of donate.
Yeah, but there's no need. It's grand.
Exactly. Donations is a better cause.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If it comes to it, I'll mute Hooke and make him be quiet during break so you don't miss anything.
Again, that's not a shared command, that one. It's only the votes that we've shared. I can set them up as a shared command if you like, actually. I don't mind. I can do that right now.
Which one's the me one? I don't have that set up.
I'll do it now. So I think we're near the end of this, folks. Asking the GPT. We're very close to the end.
Still gassed over the season finale. Yeah, so anybody that's not following
I haven't watched it.
Channel High Scores High Stakes. I haven't watched either, but that's their Twitch page. But there's links on it as well. It takes you onto their podcast. It's the world's #1 competitive PlayStation podcast. So give them a follow.
You know what's currently the most pre-ordered game on PlayStation in the UK? And it's in the top 7 in the States.
GTA 6.
Halo 1 remake. It's top in the UK.
Because GTA 6 can't be pre-ordered yet.
Exactly.
And it's out in a couple of months. And we know
nothing about it. Though.
That is.
Halo, of course it does. Exactly, Teddy. Right, McKenzie, that might work now, if you want to give that a word. The exclamation mark me. For anyone that has a walk-on in my chat, that should work even if you're in Leyorics now. Guess what our topics this week? Record now, Hooke. Hey. There we go. Oh, you're on my chat now, McKenzie. It doesn't count. I love you, McKenzie. Never change. Never change.
Is it dropping July? Yeah, it's out July. I don't know what. It's like the 16th or something, isn't it?
What, Halo? 23rd if you pre-order. 28th if you don't. So 23rd for me. 4 p.m. for us, though, which is well annoying. I have to wait till 4 o'clock in the day. There we go. That's working, McKenzie. Good man yourself.
Don't miss the day of work for it then. Just book the next day.
Oh, in fact, I'm off the next day. I think it's out on Thursday. I'm off Fridays anyway.
Oh, nice one.
Absolute result. Nah. So I'll play it that night just. Thursday night you'll be streaming, but like, I'll be there, but lights are on, but nobody's home. Literally, I'll pop in and be all right, and then I'll just be haloed. I'll mod if you need me to, but apart from that, I'll be haloed. 6B? What?
I was trying to type it into your stream, but I typed it onto both of them.
Now you popped up. You're walk on a man.
I know. I don't want to use my streak.
That's true. I have your stream open too for that reason. You never heard it on the Orc stream? You won't. No, you won't hear it on the Orcs, McKenzie. You only hear it on my end because it's a my streamer bot, not his. But it's a share. You can set up share commands. You can't share actions unless we set up a duplicate action.
But do you know, right? See, to get all that stuff to work, you have to have streamer bot open.
That's true. Now, I don't want to be a dick, right? But I'm going to be. So, absolutely no problem helping people with streamer bot and technical stuff, right? And as you know, we're on a YouTube channel, right? So if I do a wee plug here, like, you know, we do a YouTube channel. However, I got a comment saying a person didn't realize that they needed streamer bot open for it to work. I mean, come on. That's like saying I didn't know that I had to have OBS open to stream.
I don't know what they'd be in the car, they drive it.
Fucking didn't get anywhere. Saving an absolute fortune, petrol though.
Tomahawk, 23rd of July is your birthday.
Whose?
Tomahawk's.
Tomahawk. Ooh. Might see if Mrs. Tomahawk will get it for me. Tomahawk, I will buy you a copy for your birthday on PlayStation. Add it to your Amazon as a gift thing and send me. You can do it vaguely where I don't get your address. Send it to me and I will buy you a copy of Halo on the PlayStation for your birthday.
Never give me your address. You'll land your house.
I will land your house.
It's
asking for sugar and then I'll never leave.
Oh, Burton, that was bad. There was one as well where they could. There was one that had answer as well where we took the import code, but didn't know how to open Notepad.
Aye.
And you're all, what are you doing in StreamerBot if you don't know how to open Notepad?
Yeah, I literally renamed them. Then they have like text in the name, so they'd be like, "Oh, it's a text file." Yeah, don't be shit. Like, I'm sorry, like, but like, no, it's the basic stuff, and it's covered in the video. Watch the video instead of asking the question. But anyway,
50% of the population have below average intelligence. That is a fact. That no matter what population, that will be a fact. was worth remembering when you
Yes.
put stuff out in the wild, Teddy. That's phenomenal.
I need to check into your stream here, and I forgot.
John, oh, your birthday too as well. Happy days. Mine's is the day after Tomahawks.
So it is.
Didn't know I needed to breathe to stay alive. You do, McKins? You do?
That's a good one.
You should check into
you should check into Leyoric stream. Be funny. Oh, I did check in.
Did you?
Here, did you see Leoric's new overlay? How nice is that? How impressive. Very nice. Very nice.
Very nice.
Something. What age are you going to be, Sean? You're younger than us, Sean. That's why I'm curious. Wait, since when was Halo on PlayStation? I assume there's no well, so when Phil Spencer was there, he was of the approach of, right, we're going to move everything now. They're basically becoming Sega. So they announced the Halo 1 remake, and as far as I know, they had like kind of agreed for 2 and 3's remakes, which are happening, to come to PlayStation as well. So Halo 1's remake is going ahead because it's already been sent, like, there's physical boxes and shit that have been shipped or whatever, merch, all that stuff. So that's happening.
Your physical box.
Halo, that's all right. Halo 2 and 3 might get canned and only be Xbox again. But yes, Halo the 1 remake, which I have to say, I was really skeptical about. They've done it from the ground up. I watched a short today where they took the original storyboards from the original dev team. And I've, like, for the cutscenes and stuff, they've restored all the stuff that they wanted to do but didn't have the budget and time to do. Like, it's a proper labor of love. Like. But anyway, that'll be on PlayStation. As for any other Halo going forward, probably not, because Gears E-Day was also announced for PlayStation, and then they walked that back. Literally, like a day before Sony's State of Play, apparently. They told Sony, yeah, you're not getting it anymore. And they had it pulled from the show. So I think they burned the bridge with Sony, to be honest. In that way.
There was Phil Spencer, like Hooke was saying, did want to make a lot of the stuff multi-platform just because more monies.
I'm okay with Halo going multi-platform for the record.
So that's what the more people play a good game,
by me.
Like I don't like console wars anymore. I'm fed up with it. I'm tired with it.
Same.
I don't want to have to buy the newest bit of hardware just to play a game which can run on any other bit of my hardware.
Yep.
It's annoying. Like, see, whenever the Final Fantasy remakes were coming out exclusive to PlayStation for a year, that annoyed me because
it's just scummy.
It was hitting their sales. Square Enix even came out and said it's having a negative effect on their sales, having exclusive, and that's why the third part is multi-platform upon release.
Yep. In uni, we were always told to treat the users as if they were stupid when doing GUI work, because they usually are. Yes. That's the thing. Like, people, it doesn't matter how well you test something, the general public will break it or find a flaw in something straight away. So true.
He's no longer the Dark Knight. This is true. He's not the Dark Knight anymore.
Oh, you prick. I forgot. Tomahawk. I'm going to send you an Xbox copy now, madness.
I asked Leyoric for some advice and thought I wouldn't get roasted for it not knowing. Teddy, no, me and you sat in the call the other night and we sorted some kind of complicated shit out and it worked out really well.
Oh, did you? Can you tease what you were working on?
Oh, no, Teddy's already done it in the stream. So Teddy wanted a simple way of like having a text file with a name and a sentence and to give a custom shout out to somebody.
I've seen it because I got one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just did it through C# and have it looked at the text file. There's a line that separates the name and the text, and then they'll pull the text and fire it in the box.
Just switch on the username variable, just.
Yeah. 20th July is your birthday, 31. Oh, to be 31, to be young again, Sean.
You whippersnapper, hey. I'm only 35. Like.
Yeah, this is only Halo 1 as well, Burton. It is.
What was that?
It's funny because
only Halo 1
was showcasing P5 and they had to scrub that text. Oh, no way. So
that actually, the Xbox podcast, they had to actually pull that segment. Or PlayStation podcast, whatever it was. Sorry. Go ahead.
Do you remember when Ratchet and Clank came out, the newest one? And they were like, the one
Rift and Time.
Teleport, they go through all the rifts and they're all, this is only powerful with the PlayStation 5's custom solid state drive. And it turns out it works on any solid state drive. It was just a
works on any solid state drive.
It even works on a normal hard drive, but you can tell the difference then at that point. Like,
you can tell the difference just, yeah.
Like,
if you have a fast enough SSD is what it should have said in small print. Like,
any SSD that meet the requirements it works on.
Yeah, so honestly, see, for anyone that hasn't played Halo, going forward, like everything that I've seen of this remake, it is going to be like, I don't want to call Capcom levels of a remake because We haven't played it yet, and they are the golden standard when it comes to the Resi games. But it seems that way. Like, absolute labor of love. Like, it's insane. So it'll be the quintessential way to play Halo 1 going forward, because as much as it's my favorite game of all time, loads of people these days will play Halo 1 for the first time and be like, it's well slow. Because they're used to modern shooters being really fast.
Yeah. And sprint.
And I respect that. I get that. Like, so, yeah, sliding and all that shit. Like, I get that. So the one remake, they're doing it perfectly. Like, you'll have sprint and all now, but you can turn it off and have it like classic Halo as well, which is perfect. But anyway, I'll shut up. I could fill the entire stream talking about Halo.
Funny what you said about Capcom though. I sent you a message about this the other day. I was in a bit of a rage. Now, I'm a massive Final Fantasy fan, and I love the remakes. Like, for what they are, I love them.
Yeah.
But someone that we know was streaming it the other day, the remakes, and someone... There's Flange!
Where are they?
And someone in their chat turned around and said, Capcom could learn a thing or two on how to do a remake, and I was like, oh my god, who is this person?
I see, that's
mad.
They
tell lies. Why are they
telling Resi remakes are perfect.
Capcom are the gold standard to remakes.
No, you can debate like the content of the games all day long, but the quality.
Oh, 100%.
And like the care given to them, like, is what makes them the gold standard. Like
was it?
If Halo 3 gets redone, I might have to put Zelda in the bin and go Team SWAT for 50s again. I'll be there with you. Apparently, that's like the worst kept secret in game development at the moment. Sorry to cut you off a bit there. 2 and 3 are being remade. Burton. The reason that they've remade Halo 1 is because Halo 7 will be still like basically what they've done for Halo 1 now. They've taken Reach's engine, modernized it as much as they can, and they've visuals as Unreal Engine 5, which is why it looks fucking phenomenal. They're going to do the same then going forward for every Halo game. So 2 and 3 is happening because a lot of the assets that are in the Halo 1 remake, they've taken from Halo Reach 2 and 3 and put them into Halo 1. Not to spoil too many things. So it's definitely, the idea was future-proofing. Do this phenomenally well. It's less work in future and for future titles.
I heard the title's been leaked though for the Halo Reach remake. They're calling it the Halo Reach Around.
Fuck's sake. This house. Wait, that's a heavy one. We'll turn that over.
I'm surprised
we can
go
the
Unreal
game.
6. Yeah, let's get in the game. Let's play video games. Because we'd say we were going to try and finish this tonight.
We did. And we have about 3 hours, I think, roughly, give or take. Right, I need to open the game. I don't even have it open. Hold on.
Jesus.
It gets the memory leak. That's why I didn't open it.
Your memory leak?
No, we've talked about this. I don't even have my controller.
Uncle Flange, I wouldn't, not in a shared stream of Hook, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't poke that bear. What's a memory leak? It's what happens when you get the men of our age.
Yes.
Your memory leak. Your memory
Why did I open Steam big picture for? How do I undo this? Fix a big picture.
We haven't even started it, Kira. We haven't even started.
Kira, what is happening, sir? Good to see you.
Right, we've noticed that the last few streams we get to about the 2.5 hour mark, and then it just stops.
Yeah, that's why I didn't open the game.
Yeah. Like when you start leaving your keys in the fridge. There's a leak in the fridge. What, is there water everywhere? No, just there's potatoes and there's a leak and there's onions.
You've never played it, Flange? Well,
you're in for a good time when it comes out.
The one remake I was just saying, Flange, basically the TLDR is an absolute faithful from the ground up remake, like, and expanded on. Every cutscene, every bit of lore, every bit of enemy and stuff that they couldn't do originally back in 2001, they've now done. With the original storyboards, the original asset files and stuff that were cut. It's a proper labor of love. And they added 3 new missions as well, which is amazing.
Want a Halo with me? Ooh, woo. Well done, Teddy. Well done.
Yes, is the answer to that question. Right, hold on. Resi 5 is muted, and if I do that, does it unmute it? It does. Sweet.
I would assume so, Burton. Multiplayer is a massive part of it. I haven't seen anything about the multiplayer.
At Backlash?
Backlash. No, there's no multiplayer in
at
Backlash. The one remake. It's just campaign.
Really?
Yeah, because they're working on. It's called Campaign Evolved. Yeah.
At
the reason being is because for the last 3 years they've had certain working on a multiplayer project. So their idea going forward is
Backlash.
Halo will have its own multiplayer, like standalone thing, It has every game mode or whatever that you've ever seen in Halo is its own separate thing, and then the extra games that ship will just be campaigns.
That's not good enough.
As apparently their plan. I need to enable the game.
Veto.
What is it? Where's the 5?
Of course, that redeems Flamash. Yes, it was. It was.
There we go.
The great disruptor. I enjoy the fact that you two are clearly sitting right beside each other and still messaging through chat.
I need to invite you for your Steam, don't I?
Tell me what you want.
Bitch.
Oh, excuse me?
Start game.
No.
What's wrong with you?
What do you say?
To feed the dog.
Bitch.
Oh,
No.
just feed the dog. Okay.
No. I'm not going to give you a treat if you
There's
call
me
me that.
opening my mouth.
Well,
What do you say?
the Halo remake will have 4-player split screen, and physical in-person 2-player split screen, but 4-player online across Xbox and PlayStation, which is pretty fucking cool, dude.
You said that before you started. Well, it's true, Sarah. This is true. It's weird because as soon as it plays, even though I have earbuds on and they're noise cancelling, she just comes over. She knows. She knows.
She knows. I bet her hearing's that good. That's the thing.
It's funny because she starts growling when the postman is like streets away. She hasn't even seen him, and she's like,
you can hear Levan. Right, where are you? Thank you for the check-in, Flange. Much appreciated. I have a cool idea for something to do with my check-in, by the way. I just haven't done it yet.
Halo remake. John Spartans replaced Crash Bandicoot.
Thank you,
No, it's your woman 2B from.
Thank you, Richard.
Tama.
Are you showing us offline on Steam? I can't find you.
I might be. Can you find me now? Can you find me now? You're not even looking. I'm even looking.
Yes, there we are. Invite the game. Right, sweet. Finally. Thank you for checking, folks. Much appreciated. Actually tested this today, Flange. So if I do have a toggle to enable green screen, so it'll just cut me out for any time that I ever wanted. The 5-head redeem still works on it, which is pretty fucking funny looking. The Orc has joined your game.
Yay.
For fuck's sake.
I noticed as well, two of the missions I don't have the achievements for. So I don't know whether it bugged us out whenever it happened. Because I was trying to figure out where we got there, and we're actually further than where I thought.
I forgot much about this game, but it's on my list of from Fartmosh, so I'm going to hide my eyes and lurk, fellas, 100%. Hope you enjoy. Nice chat. Burden, thank you very much. Handsome devil, you.
It works on mine because he's sending his camera, which he manipulates. I don't think mine does anything over in his, apart from gets naked.
Wait, what? What?
Exactly.
Oh, you enjoy how it works on the Orcs? Yes. So basically, my camera, I've duplicated across the scenes, but it's all the one camera source. I just use clone. What's it called? Source clone in OBS. So like all the filters and stuff are set on the original. So they just carry forward, which is just handy. So then I send that also. I cloned it and send it as my virtual camera to Leyoric for Stream Together. So yeah, everything still works. Great. That was a happy accident. I'm not going to pretend that I did that intentionally. Right, I think I'm alright. You know, I'm just going to ready up. Fuck it. Oh no, shotgun ammo. You can't buy ammo.
Can't buy ammo.
Can I? Are these? They're acid rounds, rifle ammo. I'm sure I'll find some. Right. Sure to be fine.
Sure be grand.
Crash Bandicoot. Right. So we are on chapter 5.3, aren't we?
I think so. I
think this pit is back a wee bit though, doesn't it?
Might have done. Machine gun ammo, shotgun shells. Do you need machine gun
shells? Right. I need shotgun shells, but I don't have space. You have a rifle, don't you?
Yes.
Oh, right. Let's see. Can I? Right. I'm just going to give you them so I can get shotgun ammo. Right. Whoop.
Right, we ready?
Yes, let's go.
Thank God here's where it froze last time, wasn't it?
Aye. I mean, the annoying thing is we cleared all the enemies too.
Did we, or did they just all freeze?
Well, that's true.
There's shotgun rounds here if you want them.
Oh, there. Sweet.
You've a fair whack to go.
One thing-
Spoilers.
Do we? Right, okay. Fair enough. Well, according to the GPT, trying to avoid spoilers, Flemish, it did say that we're on chapter 5.3, and there's like
6 chapters.
I think it was up to chapter, yeah, it's chapter 6.2 or something is the end of the game. So we're close enough. That was amazing. I shot one, you shot one at the same. Right, we know we get the big freak thing that drops down.
Yeah, he's not coming down though.
No,
I
it didn't come down at the very last time either, man.
I finished the rest of James Bond.
Did you? What do you think?
Very good. It's a
Aye.
very good James Bond game.
Right, okay. Can I... Oh, you have to move stuff. Right, okay. You know what? I plan to pick it up at some stage. I don't think I'll stream it, mind you, but I plan to pick it up.
See, I didn't. I just wanted to enjoy it myself.
Aye, 100%.
You
Although I
need
say this
electric
now,
rings?
but like, as soon as Halo comes out, I'm not going to play anything.
You need electric rounds?
What did you say, sorry?
I have electric rounds in here.
Ooh, I could probably take them. Oh. Hey, please.
What are you doing?
Just about. There's a thing widgeting up there. Hold on. I'll be with you in a second. Let's see. Right, I thought that was going to drop down. That was a waste. Where are you? You're behind me? Oh, I forgot about that building over there. Oh shit, there's somebody right beside me. Oh, you dick. There we go. Does he jump across? He does. I shoot him off the edge. I can. Fantastic. I've heard there's a weird thing with the new ball game. A weird thing? Do tell, Teddy. What do you mean?
What's the weird thing with it?
Plum's just saying if we absolutely hustle, we could get through this too. I knew that thing was going to pop down. Right, I have this boy. I burnt myself. Bollocks.
Oh, you got me too.
It's alright. Get out of the dodge out. Right, I need to reload this. Mine. Did you kill?
Not yet.
There we go. Did he just do a roll? What the fuck?
Did a barrel roll.
Do a barrel roll. Like a bug to do with how many lives you get, and it's
Like
kept
a
at one
bug
life.
for how many
No way.
lives? It's kept to one life. You only live twice. Hey. Well done,
Oh,
Teddy.
for fuck's
Well done.
sake.
Well done. I appreciate that.
Well played. Well played, Teddy.
The
Well played.
one-liners are very good in it.
Right, okay.
And your man plays Bond at it. I wouldn't mind him doing a live-action Bond, you know.
You've no choice but to love and let die. Oh, really? Do you think he was good? Is your
I
man
thought
an
he was
actor,
very
or is he just a voice actor?
No, he's
Not,
an actor
I
as
don't mean
well.
that in a demeaning sense. Right, okay.
Does it happen to be Ben Starr? Maybe.
Maybe.
No.
I love how in Sped's stream last night, he was all, Leyoric, you have a wee bit of an obsession with this Ben Starr, man.
Me? No. Oh, shit. Another bug.
No
Another bug.
way. Oh, shit. Oh. Oh, is that a weak spot?
Yep.
I think that's... Nicely job.
Be good as a young Bond.
Patrick
in films.
Gibson.
How
Sorry,
long it takes him. Yeah. He's a ginger. He's a ginger. I'd watch Ben Starr's 007. Why has his name not been put forward? It's
Could be a
discrimination.
sexy camp Bond. I would love it too. Why not?
There's a
Right.
rifle in here if you want it.
Hold on, there's
PSG1.
like a thing flashing.
Nah. Burn all.
Heard the character customization is great though. You can change your hair color, facial hair, and even iris color. You can have a golden eye. Fuck's sake, Teddy. I keep falling for this in the first half. You keep getting me.
Do you need a rifle?
No, I have a rifle. I'll take rifle ammo. No. Handgun ammo. I'll take that. Did you take the rifle now? The Hitchin
No, I have a rifle.
KPSG. What's the one I have? SR.
He was young
Nah,
Dexter
that's probably
and Dexter Original Son. I haven't seen. I've watched the original Dexter, but I've not seen that one.
I'm tempted to take this one.
Yeah, work away.
I might.
I need help.
You know what? I might discard the machine gun. I'll take that. Pick up.
So that's in trailer for it. Right, okay. He was very good as Bond. I liked him. He was you can see him get more confident and more suave as the game goes on, and it's quite good.
I must get around it.
And you pretty much, there's no like upgrades. There's no upgrading your character or abilities. He just does Bond. And it's the
Right,
gadgets.
okay.
It's your gadget choice and all that makes it good.
Did that do anything?
You're on the last mission. Right, okay. Oh, there was a big button on there we had to press. Did anybody press it?
Right, okay. Go ahead then. Oh, he was young Dexter, never Dexter Original Son. Right, okay.
Yeah, that panel should be opening now.
That worked. That worked, yeah. Ah, bollocks, we got company. Oh shit, your man has grenades strapped to his chest.
Bruno Mars.
That works. Also works. Nice.
Your game audio is absurdly low. We'll bump that up then.
Who? Leyoric?
Partner. Yeah. Is that better now? Yeah, I turned it way down because it was far too loud for me.
Right, how do we move this across? Oh, does one of us have to stay behind?
Oh, the other one has to pull the switch on the other side.
Which is
why am I
gonna
the one
be
being
left? She's the native, you know. She's from Africa, even though we're not in Africa anymore. But, right, I know I'm going to be ambushed here, probably.
Oh, I definitely am.
Where's your Jew? Not Jew. Shit. Reloading.
She's Africa. Jesus,
Nothing.
Flamash.
What'd he say?
Look at his message.
She's African, not African. Ah, that was funny. Right, you can press the big button.
Don't laugh. You're encouraging him.
No, I find it funny. I'll laugh.
You get your
Where is
cup
he?
out for Ruthie.
I got it here. John Halo. #1 pre-order game on PlayStation. You know? It might be going to be a bit cold. Ruthie, what has happened? Oh shit, I'm being shot.
That one isn't
It's not
offensive.
fair.
That's not offensive.
How is it? Like, I'm going to ask that question. How is it offensive to say that she's African, not African?
See, I've started doing this thing now where if somebody tells a joke, it's fine, but if Flamash tells it, I pretend to get offended.
Ah.
Because we had it the other day where Sierra
Okay.
told the same sort of joke,
Can't believe
and
he
I
says that.
laughed at Sierra's, but got annoyed at his.
Love that. Jesus Christ, I just got up in RPG. What the fuck?
I've been vibing. I was in ER for 2 days. Why are you in ER? Are you okay?
The TV show?
Yeah, but there's no subtlety to
I
mine.
was a
Yes,
joke
you
person. I hope you're
you
okay.
are subtle as a brick. Behind you.
Guy with an RPG behind. Oh, right, okay, thank you. There's a guy with an RPG behind us. Oh, the iframes just saved us, sir. There's somebody alive behind me.
I don't have any help for you either.
Nope. Gotcha. Oh, I got an achievement for that.
Oh, you're too thick. On the way.
Oh. Come here, I have health. I have health. Stand still. Nice. Oh, I would say.
See, that's what they should.
If it got worse,
That's what they should
bollocks.
teach over in the hospital. Just a pat in the back. Fuck.
Here, there's a wall thing here. Ruth, I hope
guy
you're
up there
okay.
with a
That
rocket launcher?
sucks.
the problem. Oh, he's trying to one of the big bloody things.
Shit! Somebody's right beside me and attacking me.
Why did she do that?
Thank you.
RPG took 3.
Right there.
Royal Mail must have been delivering it.
They did. They're
No.
not. No, they're not. Jesus Christ! What was that?
You get the health. I'll get this guy.
Right. That didn't kill. That did. Right, stand still. Now it is. Whoop. There we go. Right, so that heals you a smidge more than it heals me if you choose heal partner. Right, okay, good to know. Cool. I love that a good pat on the back keeps you from the brink. I know, it's like, get yourself together. Okay. I'll
Got
stop
him up
there.
in Resi 6.
That's fine.
Resi 6 is Flamash's favourite game, and we have multiple sources to prove this.
Yeah. Worst inflammation infection of my life. Had 4-degree fever for a weekend and now it's finally stronger. And about, oh, Ruthie, that sucks balls.
Sir, can you please die?
Well, Ruthie, I
never
hope
gonna
you're
eat.
genuinely feeling a wee bit better because that is rough. Are we winning now, lads? Here we are. I finally got him in the game. He finally stopped talking. Man just loves a chin wag.
Oh, there's a guy running.
Can't help himself. Oh, no.
Hello.
He gets up the seat. Sorry. Said hold on at the same time as shot. My bad.
We're winning. We are winning.
We are. We're doing well. Got a buff from Resi 6, I heard. Happy Irishman's good value. Oh, good man yourself. Right. Are these boys anything out here? Oop.
We have a documentary.
Oh, you're right there, weren't you? And better now, slowly, the issue now is the antibiotics is gross AF, but oh. I don't know about anywhere else in the world, but Leyoric, you probably know this with your beautiful wife being in the medical profession as well. But amoxicillin is like the de facto antibiotic that you're given.
It is.
Doesn't matter what your injury is or what your ailment is, there's amoxicillin.
That's
It
the
tastes
bloody
like
one
you're
as well.
sucking iron bars outside of a school. That's what it sounds like, or it tastes like. It tastes like you're sucking an iron bar.
Do you
Stinking.
know why you were saying that one is the generic one that's given? Do you know that you can't get paracetamol in the jungle?
Why?
Because the pirates eat them all.
Ruthie, I'm sorry. Like you're feeling terrible. And you need to come in here. Last night, I can ease it there. Did you just think of that on the spot?
No, it's a classic.
Is it? Who told you that? There's Hango Man, or if you want it there.
I have 60 volts.
Ah, sweet. I'll take it then.
Amok was silly. Yes. We were already in this room, were we not?
We were. Not
I just
from
told
this
Mrs.
angle.
Tomahawk that joke and she left the room. That's the effect I have on women.
He's 45. You're getting divorced tomorrow for telling that joke.
Different area. You're a different area, Flemish. Banger? Didn't even know her.
Here, I was in the Kira stream the other day, and he was playing Resi using a light gun on the CRT.
Oh, nice.
I was fascinated. Absolutely fascinated. Love that shit. Yeah, we did a boss fight here earlier on.
A different area. Don't say the Flemish, you'll go nuts. You go nuts if you're a fucking different area, lads.
It's exactly the same. It's like all the Raccoon Cities. They're all the same.
No, there's
But no.
Raccoon City 1 and then Raccoon City 2.
Ah, of course now. But
Get
what
the
about
map
4?
up. Jesus.
What the fuck do we have to do? Run around circles here? Oh, there's levers here. Come over here.
South Africa 1. Last boss is a bitch with the light gun. Ooh, I'd say so. Where about
This is
30?
Africa 1.
I don't know where you are. Did I run past? I ran past you.
Yeah, the green panel. Yeah. Right. Go. Oh. You spin.
This seems like a massive health and safety risk. Like the whole
Doesn't
panel,
matter.
like you could lose an arm.
You could fall off, never mind an arm. I seen a green laser down there.
Oh,
Lasers.
There's the lads.
Right. Stop shooting me, you pricks. Or even early.
U-turn.
Are we going up?
I
Or
don't
just
know.
run?
It seems
No, we're
like a
going up.
really weird system. Why
We're
did
very
them two
slowly
levers?
going up.
Why did them two levers pull up like rotationally elevator?
Right, he's going to stop us now, no doubt.
Resident Evil Health and Safety don't go together. Do you not? Do you have a secure way to exit this building? Yes. If you pick up the diamond, heart, and club key, you can exit the building, no bother. Ah. Where are they? Oh, they're hidden throughout the police station. Why? Reasons?
Oh, headshot.
Stop rotating. Stop rotating me.
Sorry, that shot blood was holding the lever. We're going up again now. You can save your ball. Do you have health, by the way?
No.
Get the map up. Flemish, it's a circle.
You're a circle.
Dead aim on the PSA. Yeah, oh, I really enjoyed that, Akira, to be honest. Really enjoyed it. Hope you're all did. Folks, if you don't know Akira, check him out. Especially if you love like original hardware and retro stuff. Here's a good bit.
I'm no good at shooting whenever I'm rotating. Or in
No,
general.
me either. Although I did get a headshot earlier on, actually. But that was probably just a fluke, to be honest.
Dead Aim's a fun game. I've never played that one, but I used to love their light games.
Got him. Sweet.
Spades, thank you very much for checking on. What is happening?
Spades, what is happening, sir?
We're
Good to see you.
annoying. I'm playing Kazan the other day.
Hey, I don't know about annoying. Like, we're a good company, you know?
Are we?
Delightful people. Aye.
We hang
That's
out
fair.
together because no one else will take us.
Even our wives.
Am I supposed to shoot that
Like a
lever?
charity kiss? I don't know. No, I decided to shoot the guy holding it. We are going up.
Alright,
Ever so slowly. Slowly.
debatable.
think.
Antibiotics I'm on
I
at the
don't know, actually.
moment. There's one called Daslin, if you know it. Tastes artificial cherry, and I hate it. The amoxicillin they give kids kind of tastes like banana is shite.
Oh,
tastes
aye,
like
aye. Do you mind
actual
that?
excrement.
Jesus Christ. I had
I
that so
too.
much when I was younger.
Hated it.
Although, I'd rather have that over a proper amoxicillin. Wish they gave us a choice as an adult. I'd have the banana one all day.
I think they should just
Well.
let us go on pure heroin. Just black tar heroin.
Ah, well, that's true too. Just be like, listen, I'm in a lot of pain. Here's steroids. Sweet. At least I'll be buff.
Do you know what's
Yes.
funny? There's an anti-inflammatory called amlodipine.
You're joking.
No, well, it's not exactly that.
Did you look? Right. I don't think we're
Sorry,
moving.
I'll be chatting and I'm not doing something quickly. Hey, we appreciate that.
No
we
worries,
are
Pedro,
men who,
alright, dude.
we are men who always do something quickly, whether they
Speak for
like it or
yourself. I
not.
told you that in confidence. Right. Who are you shooting at? Oh,
All down there. He's looking at me funny.
why do we have to shoot these for? The left is moving.
I don't know. Oh, there's a
I
fellow
think
there
we're
holding
gonna-
a
I am
lever.
not certain.
Got him.
Ah, that's good man yourself. That's what we need. Do you have health? No.
I have actual health, but I don't have any to use.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. So. Folks, thank you very much for coming on, because obviously tonight is usually Leyoric's night, and he was kind enough to postpone because I was sick, which is why the entire family, we went away for a lovely weekend, and as a punishment, we all got a bug.
See, to be fair, I was sick as
Leyoric
well,
has
so
started
it
to
wasn't
feel
just
sick.
you.
Yeah. Alright, just beat you to it there, didn't mean to. But yeah, you started to feel poorly now, you critter.
Yeah.
Right, I'm assuming we can get off here. Oh shit, I just got shot in the ass. Thank you.
Hold on.
Right, let's get off this fucking circle.
Someday, somebody's going to want to make you turn around and say goodbye, Hooke. Just hold on for one more day. Chrissy Tina,
What a
welcome
song.
on.
That's
What is happening?
Bridesmaids.
That's Wilson Phillips. You,
Ah, it wasn't Pops. I know it's from Bridesmaids. What a film, by the way. Honestly, I would watch Bridesmaids over The Hangover.
I've never seen Bridesmaids. Here,
Fantastic
here,
film.
get
Oh
back
man,
here.
it's fantastic. Hold on, I'm shooting the boy in the dick here. Thank you very much. Okay, just blew
It's
up.
also in Harold and Kumar.
Is it? Which one?
Yeah. Well, they steal a guy's cars and they're slacking off their music taste, but then the two of them are singing like going down the road. Someday, somebody's
Ah.
going to make you want to turn around and say goodbye.
Christina, what is the crack? Welcome on, good to see you. Love how we have to open doors together. Must be a co-op mechanic to stop. Like, it must have been a way of getting around a bug where like one character went through a bit and testing, and the other one bugged out or something stupid like that. That's probably
like,
what
see
it
if you
was.
ever played Final Fantasy 14 with random people, they just all run on and leave you, and you're like, eh.
Aye. Exactly.
It's Flemish's though. This isn't his favorite one. His favorite one's next. This is only Resi 5.
Appreciate the shit house right though. This is his second favorite game.
I do like this one though.
Ooh, a big temple. I was saying to sorry, excuse me. I was saying to Leyoric before the stream, like, see the first 2 streams we did of this, I wasn't overly fussed, but I've come around. I'm actually really enjoying it now, I have to say, and the story's intriguing me as well with Jill.
Dallison is containing the active ingredient blood medicine, which is effective against those super stopping bacteria from multiplying.
What are you reading? Oh,
Ruthie's
it's Ruthie's message.
comment? My God, man.
Right, okay. That's what it does apparently. Right, okay. Let's explore before we go through that door, just to see if there's any...
But we can't go through that
Yes,
door.
there's an ammo box here. Oh, okay. I want ammo and gold. I want health, not gold. Fuck's sake. Unless I can buy the guards off and the bad guys. Just pay them to leave me alone.
I'm enjoying this one. I don't know whether it's I don't know whether because it's playing in co-op. That might be a factor too that we have to consider.
I think it is why I'm enjoying it now, because at the start, the game itself wasn't pulling me in, but I was having great crack playing it with you. I was like, this is good. Good fun.
Even if you're allergic
But I'm
to
actually
other
enjoying the game
antibiotics. Ooh, right, okay. Power's off. If you get the power back on.
Of course it is. It's locked from the inside. From the inside. Right. We obviously have to run over this way and go up.
Right, so now it's switched on.
Oh. Where did you go to turn that on?
There was a switch over here.
Oh, okay. Right. Go for that.
No, it's alright. You stand there. I'll do it. I'll do it. Just let the woman do all the work.
Yes. No doubt I'm going to get ambushed now. You hate this one? I didn't like it at the start. I'll be completely honest, but the story has intrigued me a wee bit now. Where I'm like, you know what? It's grown on me.
I think you have to flick the switch for me to go up.
Sorry. I'll do it now.
That's a sullen. Well done, Teddy.
It's a son.
6 first every time playing this.
Teddy,
It
you're on
is.
fire tonight, eh?
It is.
Here, I need to give a wee shout out to Teddy. You know, Teddy's been doing
Also
early
mine.
running and like healthy meals and choices and stuff. Man's looking good.
He's looking well. I
say,
was on his chat
he's
the other
looking
day.
good.
He's
Yep.
looking slum.
Oh, it's liquors. You're up there with you, shit.
Help.
Yeah, let me help him. Is it still alive? No.
Now they're dead. The constant
Right,
action of
so-
fighting. I do like this part of the game though.
So that was the power you turned on.
Yeah.
You have to get inside that door somehow.
Let's jump.
There's another path you can take up there, isn't there? You can go to the other side.
Yeah. Oh shit.
Ah, shit. More liquors. Where? Oh, I see it now.
Waiting for him to come over to me.
Oh, I forgot they're blind, aren't they? Right.
Yeah, but I think this one's kind of scripted to see. Jesus, takes a while
Think
out
I
of
killed
stuff
that one?
this. No, not yet.
The rifle's 2-3 shots. Which isn't so bad. You're
No,
more
this is
like-
headshots and they're not. He's tanking them.
Oh, right, okay. This place is quite creepy, isn't it? There hasn't been much horror in this game. It's kind of just been action. Kind of more Resi 4. Just action.
Let's check the day. I'm down 1 kg and up 1 kg muscle. Oh, shredded Ted. Shredded Ted.
You absolute right. Fair play to you, Teddy. Honestly, fair play to you, dude. Because it ain't easy. But fair play to you. And it's noticeable. Even like you were always chipper anyway, but like he just seemed really like perked up.
He was always a ride and now he's just more of a ride. What's that noise?
I just get really fatigued with the constant action fighting. That was me at the start. Definitely. It was very go, go, go at the start of this game, just like balls to the wall from the start, and I was like, holy shit.
Fuck, there's loads
Give me a
of them.
break. I see that.
Man, there's a whole mountain of them.
I know I'm shooting. I think you're meant to drop into this room if you can just run.
I have to push a thing.
Oh, you
but
push
you're going to shoot them.
Jesus Christ. Right, okay.
I'm dead.
Yeah. It took my aim off there for some reason. Probably better to let you die here because there's so many of them. Yeah. Right, okay. Well, this is a bit stupid. Down 1.8 kg as well. Too lazy to go to the gym. You don't have to. That's the thing.
I'm getting ganked by lickers. It's a good way to go. It's not the worst way.
100%.
The options. Shoot
Right,
them
let me organise a
on
wee
the
bit
wall,
here.
they fall off. Stop spoiling it. Just let us play the game.
The options. Shoot them on the wall so they
Why
fall
not?
off, or let them get up so you can get their treasures. See, I was trying to shoot them at the start. They fall off the wall. I think that's what I'll do this time. Selling our shit here. Anything you want to buy before we go back on?
Yeah, I'm just selling some stuff off.
So that's only... I combine. Oh. Right, so I...
There's a third option, but you're keeping quiet in that one. Turn off the game.
Give that.
Play Resident Evil 2.
Combine with anything? Nope.
Third option,
Right, so
don't listen to
the
the
rifle
rumors.
ammo, I'm sure I'll find. Handgun is okay. I think I have too many weapons. I ain't gonna lie. I think I have too many weapons. Right, I might get rid of that rifle. Right, remove that because I have the...
Go to the pub and wait for it all to blow over. Yes.
I'll pick the grenade. Sure.
Right, so I'm going to kill the first couple, and then I'm just going to run and start pushing.
I'll just try and shoot them all off the wall, so they don't even get up in the first place. You know what I mean?
Now, how much is a pint these days? I haven't been to the pub.
A pint?
I don't know.
Like a
How
fiver?
much is a pint?
£6.
Is it? Is it?
Yep.
Did Paul Leverdine?
I appreciate that reference here. Sure. Go to the pub in this economy? Pfft. Now, as you well know,
Send me up, baby.
the famous stereotype, which is true, that Irish people enjoy a good drink. Which is true.
We do. We're good at
Now,
it.
when I lived in Brighton in 2015, as we were talking about earlier on, the one thing that I loved on a Friday is everybody at 4 o'clock picked off down to the pub. Everybody. Loved it. It's fantastic. Which isn't really a thing here. Everybody just goes home. And there was a tiny wee pub, or bar as we would say. There was a tiny wee bar not that far away from the hospital where I worked. Great.
Right, that's a bit better. It's a bit more power behind us.
I'm sorry.
Really? What's happening?
I don't have the brains.
Ready? Welcome on, handsome. Picked off the pub and stayed out till 4 a.m.
I discovered
try
if
and
you
shoot
shoot
these
them,
before
climb
they
up
get
the wall, it kills them as well. There's me
Yeah,
discovered.
I did that last time, but I only got a few of them, and then I ran out of ammo.
There's me discovered it in Flamash. Yeah, I'm just going to run for it.
Go for it, I'll try and shoot as many as I can off the wall. See another one coming up there. If any crawl behind this bridge, I won't be able to get them, is the only thing.
More Jerry35. Thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate you.
Welcome on. Ah, bollocks around.
I don't think I've introduced
Or how to
myself
reload, I
yet.
should say. Right, there's one up there, but I weakened it for you. Now I'm on pistol, which isn't fantastic.
Welcome on. What is happening? We're playing a little Resi at the moment.
Right. Not doing fantastic here, but they'll get them off the edge, I have to say.
I need to finish
I'll
this.
try this approach.
Look at this graph.
That worked.
Thank you. You think you're getting it done right? I don't know. I don't know, really. I would like to.
Potentially.
I think that's it.
Oh shit, the liquor got me.
for fuck's sake, I couldn't get thee. Oh!
It jumped down. It like clipped through the fucking...
No, there's a hole in the fence. I seen it whenever I was pushing along. There's a hole in the fence.
Oh, right, okay. Ads are going wrong. FYI.
We did alright that time.
I think we just blast through the ads, to be honest.
Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah. Right, anything else? You know what I'm going to buy? I can buy rounds, like asset rounds and shit. I'm going to buy them. First aid spray.
As long as I have 7 minutes. 7 minutes are all I can spare to play.
Flash rounds are good against lickers, aren't they?
Really sentence out a load of fucking anybody flange. You rude man. You rude man. How about pubs? The liquor got me.
I hadn't said it to anybody.
The liquor got me. I get it. Sadly, boys, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm shattered all of a sudden when I go chill with that was SG. Oh, very nice. Akira, you go enjoy
nice.
it.
Nice. Look after yourself, dude. Thank you very much for coming on and saying hello. Much appreciated. I genuinely appreciate it.
Weird flashing a blind monster seems to work. It's a flashbang as well. It's the noise component that actually stuns them. Because
it stuns them just, doesn't it?
They're hypersensitive to noise as well. Like a dog.
What's
don't use flashbangs on your dog. That's fucking cruel.
I don't know. Where are they?
Yes, the bluish one.
Everybody as well. Do you hear the AI voice he's put on to pretend it's Mrs. Hooke? Very impressive.
There's the AI pretend it sounds like Mrs. Hooke in the background. No, you don't.
Boys, sorry, I can't hang. Struggle. Not a problem, Akira. You go enjoy that.
For sure.
Never thought
the blue
that.
one, no.
I was the same when I was playing 2. I was like, why is flashbanging them stunning them? And I was like, oh, it's because there's a noise component as well. They flashbang, and that's what's stunning them. She's a deep fake. Dead in the office. It's fucking steady here. I'm also typing because I'm procrastinating. You procrastinate away, Flange. You deserve it. You deserve a break.
Struggling to stay up past 9 PM at my old age. Never late. You're all good, dude. No worries.
Finally got my ID today.
Hello?
Amazing.
What? Chrissy, what is happening, sir? Good evening. Good to see you. Right, I bought some rounds there, but I didn't get to put them in my inventory because it read it up. So I spent all the money for nothing, so I don't have all that ammo that I bought. I wasn't ready.
The grand.
What?
Trying to break free from the fucking things. I think that's him.
I think that's him. Yeah. Right. Okay. This time, let me get somewhere where I can actually get a better shot off. Might not be completely possible, actually. We'll see. Finally got your ID. It expired back in December. Didn't bother to get it renewed to May 20th. Was driver license. A state ID. I don't drive. Ah, state ID. Right, okay. Right, I'm just going to use my pistol to try and shoot these fellas off. As much as I can. I can't see them off in here now is the issue. The one just got up there. Shit.
Expired back in December. Didn't bother get renewed.
Shit, there's a heap getting.
Oh no, I think my license has a good few years left on it. I recently got it renewed, so it's not too bad.
Headshots is
I'm passing that gap, so they will be able to climb down to you now.
Okay. One got you?
Yeah.
I'm shooting. Shit, what was me?
Fucker.
Die liquor. Here I come down, maybe these shits.
You alright?
Yeah. I dropped health. Nice. I'm going to try and
There's
get
another one coming at me. He's going to get me.
Right.
Fuck, he got me. I'm dead.
Ah, for... No! Let me shit. Oh, you're dead.
Dead.
Hold on. Take a wee second here. I'm a bit flustered. Hold on. Mrs. Hooke is a deep fake. She is. Right, let me organize here and actually bring that ammo. Did I get time?
Aye, no worries.
That annoyed me. Get onto that. Let's see. Organize. Rifle ammo. I'll keep. Handgun, yes. I haven't been using that. Move. And these are flame rounds. Flash rounds. Right. Flash rounds would be good to take against lickers. Right, now I'm ready. Thank you.
Yo.
I'm tight in the office to fucking stay in here. So if I'm typing, it's because I'm procrastinating. Not at all, dude. You're grand. I love a good tidy the fucking office. So therapeutic. Love it.
I do that whenever I'm like proper deep cleaning a room. I'll just rearrange the entire room.
Yeah. I do exactly the same. Right, for these fellas that drop down to you.
Waffles! Thank you very much for the donation. It's very generous, buddy. Appreciate it.
Ah, legend.
Well.
Here, it was Mr. Waffles' birthday the other day. So happy belated birthday to
Happy birthday,
Mr. Waffles.
John Waffles. That's his legal name.
Just want to say it to come down to me this time. Crafty does shit. Shit.
Let him. I'm going to run over and just start this thing, okay?
Jesus Christ.
Because waffles are bad!
Boxman, don't you? Birthday, real name? Jeez, I know. John Waffles.
Right,
His
this hasn't
parents are
went well.
Belgium.
Just saying. Because a shit ton of them are up there because the liquor actually decided to come down this time and attack me. Just
They all coming for me?
yeah, there's a heap up. Combine waffles. Hope you're all loaded. Good to see it. Oh, what the fuck? One got me in the back or something. Yep.
Yeah, I got me. Did I get you as well?
Yep. There's one giving me two. I don't know how we can do this. I don't understand.
Big rant.
I didn't. What? I said Mr. Waffles. I didn't real name me. You man.
I said his name's John Waffles. Get good. Get.
Oh, John Waffles. Get good. Yes, probably. Probably. It can be done, yes. How long do me one doing my roast?
I have an idea. Best thing from memory is to sprint to the end and shove the box done. I'm trying to do it, but they just keep coming up my arse. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, so even the few that drop at the very start then, can you just try and sprint past them and I'll try and shoot them?
Yes, thank you very much for the donations. Well, Jesus, we're up to £325 for that thing on Saturday.
Amazing.
I appreciate it, folks.
Amazing.
Thank you very much. These are all super generous. Lovely, lovely bunch of
I do
folks.
appreciate the tip, Flemish, by the way. Mayor Waffles. You know too much.
Hooke always appreciates the tip.
Pardon me. Was the birthday good, Sir Waffles? I'm assuming so. Right.
It's,
Can you just try and run this time? To the box?
yeah, I can.
And I'll try and distract the... I pulled that lever, wasn't that fucking...
Did you?
I'll try and distract the lickers. No, maybe I didn't. Thought I pressed the button. Must be dope. Right. Always willing to my friends. Spades, what is the crack, sir? Where are we? I was saying, I only found out literally last night that you stream. Spades, I recognized your name, and I knew who you were from, like, Burton's chat and co. And then Reddy says...
What a game 2 stream.
I know, Kazan. Fantastic game. Right. There's a liquor coming down to me. I'm distracted already. Trying to kill this thing.
You get it?
Might have. Yep. Go, 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 go. Nope,
I'm running.
I got it. Just book it. Absolutely book it. Right, are you dead yet? Yes. Thank you.
I was working all day my birthday. It's just it's the same with me as well. You don't get it off anymore. You just work it. Work it, work it, work it.
Right, sweet.
Right. I am pushing.
Go for it. I'm wasting these rounds. I need to change guns.
Surely a normal day with cake. Well, if you're my size, every day's a day with cake. Watch out, let's throw some pants. And then we found a book of semi-historic value. Ooh. What was the book?
Right, I have not done well here. That rifle is incredibly inaccurate. Combine.
Could you hold them off another wee bit to get this pushed over?
Yep. Do my best here with these rounds.
Thank you. Do you have many rounds left?
Nope. 4.
There, I'm down. I'm not
need
dead.
one
I'm
because
down in the
There's a
box.
fucking heap of liquors up there. Sweet. Right, okay. So I'm assuming I just run for it now.
I don't know, unless something else is going to come through that fucking door.
You know, there's 3 seconds to that door. We need to do something to it. Let's see.
Oh, I'm just
There's
going
liquors coming down to me. I could appreciate the help. There's like 4 of them.
Yep, I'm coming out now.
Right beside you. Jesus.
Oh, shit. Sir.
Think we did it? Oh, fuck my bolts. Right, there's another one coming.
Where's it? There it is.
This game is so action heavy. It's mental. It's way hard to keep up with chat at times. There's one thing I'll say. Right, I don't need machine gun ammo. Why did I pick that up? Actually, I do. I gotta have that gun. Although the gun's shite.
No, I just want to check to see what's hanging in here because there's lockers.
Ah,
First aid spray.
right, okay. Working all day in the birthday, so normal day. Man, that's rough.
Do you have a Magnum?
That's rough. No.
There's Magnum ammo in here if you want it.
Let's see, combine shotgun.
I'm going to go up here and get the rest of the ammo and stuff that's lying about.
Go for it, sir. If there's anything other
No, I can't go up there. No,
ammo
it's alright.
shit about, no.
Why is this traffic cone kind of discolored from everything else? No, there's nothing. Does nothing.
It does stand out
Right.
a little bit, doesn't it?
Come on over to me.
Scared. Do you have a Magnum? No.
A Magnum? No. I did have one, but I got rid of it. Fictional book called
Yeah, I don't know
Raccoon.
why I
It's about a
picked that up.
boy who was a raccoon for a pet. 8 years after the raccoon comes out, an anime, overindulgent Japanese parents special ordered raccoons to use as a pet.
I grew up and got on really.
But the raccoons, what do you think was going to happen?
I know, exactly. We're doing very well, Speds. Thanks for asking, dude. We've been really enjoying this. I don't know if you played this one, but I was saying at the start that I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I love it,
Only
I
use
do.
VLC. Very good.
Only use VLC. Good idea, VLC. Do you mind back in the day, like the earliest versions of like IPTV for VLC, you would just put in the URL that you'd find on a random form.
You're just saying letters.
No, I work.
VLC, IP.
That sounded like she was saying like Expelliarmus or something.
Damn it, where's Jill?
Damn it.
Jill? Maybe I'll tell you. Maybe I won't.
Is this going to be Jill?
Oh, could be. Maybe she's under some sort of spell or something. It is a woman. Well, as womanly features, shall we say. What the fuck? It's Neo.
Did we load the Matrix?
I know. The chosen one.
We want some answers.
You haven't changed.
There he is. Checkered man. He 1000 himself.
Wesker, you are alive.
Our life.
We last met at the Spencer estate, wasn't it? Well, isn't this one big family reunion?
Wesker.
I would expect you to
That's a
be
weird outfit.
happier to see us.
It is, isn't it?
Us,
That's a carbon fiber or something.
so slow to catch on.
Who's that?
Jill?
Jill doesn't have blonde hair.
Oh.
Jill.
Oh, it is Jill. Looks nothing like her.
It's me, Chris.
They recast her.
Are you sure that's her?
There we
The
go.
one and only.
Recast her as Nolan North. Oh, fuck, she can fly.
She reminds me of Raiden now from MGS, I'm not gonna lie. The way she's jumping about it. Raiden. Where's the action button?
No, she couldn't do any of this shit in Resident Evil 3. Fucking, no, it's
I
bullshit.
know. Where did all this come from?
I'm scammed.
Wow.
Scammed. I've been scammed.
Now,
You can watch BBC or ITV on VLC with the right URL. Hook is okay. Waffles gets it.
two on two.
He gets it.
Right, Jill.
Doesn't even have the same face.
Wait.
7 minutes.
Oh!
This is all I can spare.
He's saying the
Hey!
thing!
Ah, brilliant, Ted.
I'm just going to shoot her then.
Shit.
Well, she's
There was a
rolled back
prompt
to
there to
this.
counteract,
She's
and I was not
a fucking agent.
ready for it. Is he dodging my bolts? He is. What the fuck? Right, I'm gonna get some distance between me and them. And try and... Is this a flash round?
The titty virus.
Right, he just de-aggroed for me for some reason. I don't think we can hurt Wesker, you know.
We can hurt her though. I just
Well
killed
done.
her.
I think he just put a bolt in her head. Oh, it's Meryl all over again.
Fuck's sake, so we're not allowed to kill her. Fake Jill.
Is this like
Oh.
a... This is on a timer, I bet you. Bet you that's
No,
what
I
it
think
does. It's
I
like a
think it's
timer
supposed to
where you
kill-
just have to kind of run the clock down.
I don't think I'm allowed to kill Jill.
I don't think so. I think you done goofed there. Right, let's see. I'll take those flame runes. Ready. The T-virus.
The T
You'll see when
virus.
you're having a meal.
The T virus.
Here I am, offering you my precious time, and you've wasted. I know. Oh, tomahawk here, not as your walk on, is odd.
What's this about?
Future hinges upon this fight.
Oh,
Oh,
I got
nice.
kicked through the door.
That was clever. Oh, there's a herb
I
there.
didn't mean to.
Pick that up.
Time to change tactics.
No, can't pick it up.
We should hide.
We should
We should
hide.
hide. What?
You're merely postponing the inevitable.
Wait, what? Where the fuck did Jill go? Oh, she's running around up there doing God knows what.
That's me.
Right, we have to hide. This must be on the timer.
Dude and Chris, how you so love your precious found you.
What? Oh shit. Oh, so we do have to hide. We just have to run away. Fantastic. Right,
We
this
don't
is a bit
actually
slow.
do.
Why can't we hide him like?
You can't hide forever.
Bet you we can.
I know.
Like I actually bet you we can.
Hide and seek champion, 2K.
This is
20.
what we have to do. We just have to hide. This is about shit.
This must be on a timer. Well, by the way, there's another issue with high FPS in this fight. Oh, for sake. So is RPG the answer again? RP5 remake going to be weird because the new Wesker is a more evil voice and less panto Val. Right, okay. RPG isn't the answer, right, okay.
You're merely postponing the inevitable.
Wait, she's coming for me. She's coming for me. I'm running. I'm running.
Yeah, run, run. I know what Wesker's doing, but I'm just standing behind a pillar here. Oh, he's near me.
Because of Wesker being a DVD.
Oh, I dropped down. Can't. Can we just leave? Is that an option?
I don't know.
You disappoint me. Is that just accept your fate?
He's coming for me.
Wait, that's you. Hello.
Hello. We're just playing hide and seek here.
What does he mean there you are? How do you find us? Oh shit, Jill's right beside us. Is that you shooting?
No, it's
You're
Jill.
merely postponing the inevitable.
Where is he?
I don't know.
Here
I actually don't mind if someone gives us a tip here.
and you waste
This is about mad.
running around.
Yes, we will waste by running around. Because you're a dick.
That you? That's you. Okay. This is kind of like Dead by Daylight. Play Monster Hunter.
That play Monster Hunter. That's a brilliant tip. See, Wesker says we can't hide forever, but it
Oh,
seems
what's
like
these things on the
we
roof?
can. They do know.
Merely postponing the
Okay.
inevitable.
Apparently we are postponing the inevitable.
Just the tip? Yes. Just the tip. All we need. Anything else is greedy.
Aim well. Just the tip. Makes everybody right. Just the tip.
Playtime is over.
Wait time's over, apparently.
Jill's down here with me. That's not good.
I don't know where Wesker is.
No, me either.
Oh, I'm behind him. He doesn't see me. I wonder if I could
You
sneak
knock
up
him
on
out?
him.
Yeah.
I'm wondering. Don't know he
This is so
teleported.
odd. Maybe he does teleport. Just tackle him with
I found a big chest.
I
Any use was a
expected
timer.
more of a challenge after all this time, Chris. How disappointing.
I know what you mean, no Tomahawk. It's very Panto, his voice.
Yes. Go.
He's behind you. Oh, no, he isn't. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, no, he
What if he
isn't.
just answers the phone in the middle of combat?
I don't think it counts as combat for him.
Well, true. I'm sorry, but that's MGS all over it.
Kojima must have done this, but
Come on! It's me! Chris! Snap out of it!
You snap your arm, kid.
Chris. But now that your partner has arrived, I'll leave you two to catch up.
Come on, Jill! Get yourself together, wake up! Jill Valentine! Jill!
Remarkable. Still resisting at such an advanced stage. Commendable, yet futile.
shoot the thing in his hand, Chris. Come on.
Chris, I've got
I know.
work to do. Have fun watching Jill suffer.
Being controlled by a handheld device. It's like modern society. Oh shit. Never mind.
Boob crystal.
What's that on her chest?
We have to get it off her.
Right, now we can shoot her.
Now she dies.
I'm sorry, that was a chest shot.
If we can remove that device
Fixed.
on her chest.
It's like your fucking check-in game. It's fixed.
What?
That's what we're gonna do.
There's a shot on the chest and it didn't count.
I'm shooting her, but I'm not getting her boob. There we go.
Oh, I could kill
Oh,
her.
did you kill her?
Yep. Yep.
Partner has
I'm
died.
assuming
I'm
it's
fine.
probably a prompt. We probably have to get close there or something.
Right.
But I
okay.
think if the two of us go up and try and do the whole shooter in the knee and then do the melee attack, probably.
Oh, thank God.
that
I
type of
searched
thing.
her. Let's just run over and try and grab her.
Let's do it. Sure, what could go wrong?
All right. And that's what we're gonna do.
How do we remove it?
She.
Jill, what are you doing? Stop this! Jill, answer me! It's me, Chris! Don't you recognize me?
Oh, nice.
Right, grab her boobs.
Hair off. No bother. Come on.
Come on, snap out of it! Don't do this, Jill!
Oh, well done. Jesus, you just planted her head in the floor.
I think I'm supposed to get round the back here, the grabber.
Don't want to hurt you!
Run the outside. There we go. Go for it. Mash A. Mash A.
Go!
Probably going to take 3 or 4
It's going to be
attempts.
like going boss thing, so you have to do it
Typical
3
boss fight
times.
fashion. Oh, shit. Green chat. I bet. Right, so we don't shoot her and then we just get behind her and grab her. So, when I put a rifle around her head a minute ago, that was not the right choice.
Yeah, that's not the way they do it. You don't make friends that way.
This is probably the FPS issue that Flemish was talking about.
Stop this! Jill, answer
Got her.
me!
Yeah, this is bugged. I'm
I
down.
think so.
I think so, yeah.
See if you can grab her.
Right, go for it. Yeah, man, it's definitely bugged.
It's me, Chris! Don't you recognize me?
Yeah, I have to mash A
No,
to
it's just
hold,
one of us.
and Leyoric has to mash A to pull. Yeah. She's dead. Okay, let me see if you can tell, so this is the FPS issue. If you don't mind. I really hope the remakes they elaborate more on things like this. My headcanon is that Chris was already suspicious of Wesker as being a pain for the mentioned mission. Right, okay.
In the original game, not so much in the remake. I think this is the original game, is it? It's a gold edition.
Right, hold on, don't write it up yet. Yeah, this is just the gold edition that my door's banging now because my window's open.
Yeah, so usually caused by the game's high frame rate, which breaks the damage logic and the quick time events. It often feels a bit, but you can bypass it with these steps. Cap your frame rate on PC to 60. Remove your AI partner's weapons. Well, we're not AI. Don't use guns, stun and pull method. Right, so can we cap it? Well, I think mine's is 60. Capped at 60 anyway.
I don't have anything open to cap my FPS. I could do it with one video, maybe? Let me see. I'll have a look. Hold on.
Mine's is limited to 60. Is yours limited?
Where'd you check?
I could just see up in the corner, it's 60 FPS.
No, I don't have Reva Tuner or anything open. I'll check here and see because it fucks about with OBS. No. Reva Tuner. Open it here and see. Stop stealing my mouse game.
Like, is it your game that has to be limited because you're the host?
Maybe because I'm host. Yeah. What's it over there for?
Oh, it's you. It is me. Sleeping with failure. By the time you fix it, it'll be the gamer's 2.5 limit and we'll close. Well, that'll probably be true.
See, that's true.
Why don't you...
Right.
No, if we exit out, we'll have to do the Wesker bit again, won't we?
I think so. I'm going to pause this now. Back in time. Right, I can do it for everybody. Hold on. Do it for everybody. Game keeps stealing my mouse, which is well known.
You're in the part where Wesker.
You're in the part where Wesker high
causes
FPS causes 7 minutes to be shorter.
Ah, right, okay. So it works in your favor that way.
Well, that's cool. Program settings. Hold on.
But probably 4.
Resident Evil 5, where are we? See, this is stupid. Like, I think they'd patch and fix this shit.
Yep.
And before my computer freezes here.
Bum, bum, bum,
Let's
bum.
see. Resident Evil 5. Add select program. Frame rate. Right, where's frame rate? Max frame rate. Set it to set it to defaulted to 3000. Yeah, that's good.
Yours is? Class.
3000 FPS. Dead on it.
3,000.
Right, I'm capping it to 60. So right, it's now capped at 60. Let's see.
Let's see
That
what
works.
difference.
Played on 144p. Be funner. Right. So no shooting this time. We'll just run up and just
Remove
fucking.
that device on her chest. She might return to normal.
Jill, what are you doing? Stop this! Jill, answer me!
It just seems like we're kind of just roaming about her.
I know. Right. I'd imagine it's going to take 1 or 2 tries anyway to remove this thing from her chest. It's not going to work first try, I suspect. Can weaken her by shooting her thing in the chest, but you can also overdo it and kill her.
It's me, Chris! Don't you recognize me?
Come on, come on. Right. If it doesn't work after like 4 tries, I think we're worked. Let's see. Right, this is 4th try, isn't it? Come on, come on.
Come on. Mine's just
Yeah,
limited
it's
to
up.
60, like it's not budging above it.
Yeah, mine's is limited to 60 as well. I don't know if I need to restart the game with him, but I
Oh, she's running. She's running. She's running.
Oh no, maybe it worked. Maybe it worked. Here we go. Right, we just have to find her then. She's upstairs. How are the turntables? She's the one hiding now. Bonk.
Bonk.
Right, I think this is working this time.
At least it's doing something different.
Exactly. The fact that she ran upstairs.
It
That's
took more
good.
than 5 tries without weakening her. Right, okay.
Right, perfect. Well, that's good to
Do
know.
this, Jill! I don't want to hurt you!
Got it.
Come on.
Let's try 6. If I'm correctly.
We'll keep her going. It seems like we're making progress. At least something's happening.
Aye, we made further progress than last time. I wouldn't keep.
Like, Plum, I should say we have to weaken her as well.
Oh. Sorry. Yeah, he says too much kills her though.
Jill, what are you doing?
You don't have to.
Kick him in the face.
Stop this! Jill, answer me! It's me, Chris! Don't you recognize me? Come on! Roger!
Roger. Roger. To play up. Lazy, what's happening, sir? Welcome up. Let's just kick me in the wall.
Come on, snap out of it!
Got it. This is what I've been walking on. 2 full-grown Irish men, demon and a woman in a bodysuit. That's not all, bells. Here, she's kicking our ass. She's like riding.
I shot her in the
Like-
ankle.
Yeah.
Fuck off. But it
Science
helps
behind
actually.
is
Right,
Jill having that T-virus vaccine and Wesker's experiments basically means Jill is immortal. Yet she's in the Capcom basement at the moment.
we're going to
Yeah,
shoot the,
a bit
we're going
stupid.
to shoot the red thing.
Right. So let's not shoot her.
It's it.
Because I don't think
Shoot-
you
with the
have to.
shoot the
Correct me
red
if I'm
thing.
wrong, but I don't think you have to.
If we could remove that device on her chest, she might return to
7
normal.
minutes. 7 minutes, so I can speak. That's Tomahawk's walk one as well, is it? Shoot her! Oh, she just flopped me. Jesus, took half my health. She's dead. Right.
She's either too strong or too weak. She has to pick one. Pick a lane. Who's a lane?
Snipes still, I know. That's not shooter. Snipes her.
See if you grab her and then I shoot her.
If we can
That's
remove that
such a
device
weird
off her
sentence.
chest, she might return to
I know what you mean, though. That's right. What the fuck? Usually doesn't have a gun at this point.
Bonk.
Jill, what are you doing?
Now she's away. Oh, there she goes. Away she is.
Right, okay.
She's fine. She's dead, but fine.
She just jumped back down.
Oh, right, okay.
Sick. Let's run away, you shit. Oh, she's got her guns out again. What a stupid camera angles.
Right, I got her. Shoot her in the boob.
Right. Now that
You get her?
immediately just breaks the
Stop this! Jill, answer me!
hold. Right, go for the usual.
There we go.
Oh no. Right, okay. Right, we'll do that then. Sounds like a plan. Right, let's only shoot her in that mode then.
Yeah.
Just so we don't kill her. Right, go for it.
I don't know how many boob shots she can take. But next one we'll try and whip it off. This sounds so weird.
Right, okay. Oh, tear off. I had a prompt.
There we go.
Come on. Looks like Jill. Oh, stop on the way, you shit. Nice. I suspect we have to shoot it more, you know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. It's getting very sparky, isn't it?
It's me, Chris. Don't you recognize me? Come on, snap.
She's not
Oh, I
answering
nearly had her
Come
there.
on.
I know. Because I'm mashing the X trying to get behind her, you see?
Got her.
Right, now I get turned around here.
Good job.
Chris Akira, what is happening? Chris Akira has reason to celebrate today. That
I know.
man got himself a job.
Fair
Fucking
play, Chris.
fantastic.
Well done. GG.
Congrats, Chris. Wasn't even out of work for a week or two. Man, smashing it.
I think one more
Do
might
this,
do it.
Jill.
Yeah. Hell yeah, congrats, that's right. Right, let's try and pull it off again this time, maybe. Just to see. Oh, no, there we go. Sweet, go for it.
There we go.
Careful now. Yes. Nicely
Oops,
job.
fucking wrecked. Right.
Thank you, Kit. Thank you, Teddy. Sweet. Don't shoot her in the leg, but body slam her into the stone. Head first.
No way. Head first into the concrete.
Jill,
But an
Concussion's
ankle
fine.
shot would kill her.
are you alright?
Sorry, we're going streaking through
Say
the
thank you for
quad
the
and
streaks.
into the gymnasium. Come on, everybody!
Jill can wear a bodysuit. I can streak. You're 100% right.
It's okay.
You're Sheva, right? Yeah,
Mr. Lover,
Sheba.
man. Sheba.
I couldn't control my
It's the same thought.
Oh my God.
Same brain cell.
I'm aware. Forgive me. It's all right. Thank you.
But like, Jill, never mind that. They dyed your hair blonde. That all bit. Amazing acting. I agree, right? It was a different
You're
time.
right. You do need to stop him.
She needs
Oh,
to
but
get a
you-
proper like chest tattoo now to cover up them wounds.
This is your only chance.
Mm.
If Wesker succeeds, Uroboros will be spread across the globe. Millions will die.
Oh, yeah, but
I'm all right.
Shoot her again.
You
It'll be
need
funny.
to stop him.
We're going by Monster Hunter rules. We have to kill her and
The only
then
one who can.
burn her skin and the armor and weapons.
Before it's too late.
Yeah, and she was already doing the part where she runs away after enough damage.
Don't you trust
Like a
your
monster
gut?
hunter. You know?
Yeah.
Shabba.
alright.
Jill,
Music.
it's me. That makes it much better, Teddy.
Grabs the boob. Heal the moment. Heal the moment. I grabbed the wrong thing, trying to pull it off.
You have to survive this.
Why bleach your hair though?
I know.
Did they want to make her more
I'm playing the
Wesker looking?
Ouroboros.
Chris,
Or the Las Plagas.
All right.
T-Virus in it.
In it, bro.
Dooms, man. Dooms.
The Dooms.
over there.
Daisy, what's happening, good sir? Right, I know this is endgame, because the GPT says without spoilers, if you see a big ship, you're in the final stretch.
Oh, happy days.
Put an end to this. Let's go.
This is about the time that the game's gonna go meh, broke.
Yeah. Probably. You know, we could probably restart it if you want, because we're at the end of that chapter. You think?
Yeah, we could do.
Right, well, I'll continue first. No, sweet, we're grand there, I think. That should remember where we are. Do you want to... Have you closed yours yet?
No, I haven't. No.
No, do you want to ready up? And we'll let the next cutscene or whatever play. And then we'll load back in.
Wesker said, "Let me. Game completed." I'm right back.
Chapter 6-1, ship deck. Yeah, there we go, we're in the home stretch. Okay. Now, come on. A big ship? Like, this is MGS2.
It is. The Hudson River. 2 years ago, we received classified intelligence. A new type of metal gear scheduled transport. Oh, things stink.
No. Using
But
a
our
ship like
nose has
this
been
would
out in
give
the
away
cold for too
position
long.
soon. They must have another plan.
You want to cut out here?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. It's saving now. Sweet. Save successful. On the
Did we
restart.
quit the whole game?
Quit the whole game. Yeah. I would. Just to be safe. Can't hurt. Save us to do all that bullshit again. Especially if you get to like the middle of a chapter and then it breaks or something. You know what I mean?
Because it just got to the stage where you didn't even know it was broken. And then you were just like, "Oh, nothing's moving and no one's dying, and I can't pick anything up."
Yeah. Stops at the shadow stuff.
Mr. Lover Man, Sheba.
Shadow. Right, I'll bite you again there. I like the logo for Resident Evil 5.
Yeah,
pretty
the,
cool.
the one for 6 is even better.
Is it?
It's like a giraffe getting a blowjob. Did the game
So
crash?
relatable.
No, we preemptively restarted it just in case.
Yep. We're ahead of the game tonight. No pun intended. Right. Leyoric. Invite to game. Right, invite said.
Right, Sam.
Something to look up to. She doesn't age, or at least ages slowly. Immortal is probably the right. Okay.
No, actually look
Not
up the
gonna be able
logo
to
for
unsee
Resident
that
Evil
now.
6. You can't unsee
Fuck's
it.
sake.
Ian has a whole
I can
big
see
thing about it.
now. Ian?
Aye. He has a whole redeem and all about it.
Right, let's see. Let's organize our shit. So, pistol. Upgrade this at all.
Love Wesker's dialogue in this game. Very end, Chris will go, "Wesker, why did you do it?" "Dooms, man. Dooms."
Don't have enough money. That's fine. Rifle. Let's upgrade that fucker. So, capacity. Just upgrade my shit here. Right. There's treasures we can sell too. Sell. The money is shared, isn't it? I'm not stealing it all here.
Yeah, oh, it is, yeah.
Ah, sweet. That's right. Handgun, flame rounds, grand rifle ammo. Right, leaves a spot for shotgun shells. Right, I'm ready. Happy days. Ouroboros, global saturation, villain words. Love Wesker's dialogue in this game. I can't not see Panto now that you've said it.
Wesker, that character from
Game
Dead by Daylight. Same as your bad Leon, he's from DBD. And all the guys from
You
Stranger
might like
Things.
DBD. Like, I think that's something you might enjoy, you know.
Hey.
This ship is huge. think they're planning to use it to spread Ouroboros?
No. Using a ship like this would give away their position too soon. They must have another plan.
Didn't mean to shoot. My bad.
Well, somebody heard you.
Yep. Forgot my button prompt for the knife. That's my bad. Oops, I can't. You got. What the fuck was that? Ah, he had a grenade. Right. Okay.
Fucking Bruno Mars there, hey?
Shotgun shells. Woohoo! Nice. So Shiva and Chris, well, DVD don't play indie horror slop. Wait, is Shiva and Chris in DVD, you know? Duchess, welcome in. Hopper needs a walk.
Duchess, thank you for signing the ledger. Wamash, no problem. Thank you very much, Colin.
All the best. Good sir. Thank you very much for the
Fucking diabolical.
Fucking diabolical.
At Backlash?
See, you don't have your top mod now, did you shout outs for you?
At Backlash.
What?
Says you don't have your top mod now, did you shout outs for you?
I have a lot
Was that
of
another one there for
Backlash? Backlash.
You need help?
No problem. Thank you very much, Sarah. You enjoy your night.
Backlash.
Thank you, Ken.
Hello,
Sarah,
other man.
before you go, actually, you popped up on my LinkedIn today. I logged into
At
LinkedIn.
Backlash.
And you popped up as well, so.
Backlash.
Right,
Backlash.
Oh, fuck, dogs.
Oh, no, there's a dog.
Hello, other man who is not my internet dad.
I've never been greeted so politely in my life. Excuse me, I'm chatting to Duchess. Stop you hitting me in the ass with a fucking electrified baton, you jerk. That was fantastic greeting, I have to say. Oh, thank you very much, Duchess, for the follow.
Make an internet dad laugh score. LOL. That's what the kids say, isn't it?
Oh.
Gibbity toilet. No kip. Or no Riz cap.
You can't even get it right. That's sick.
Of course, the whole point is I don't get it right. I used to do it to my son as well. See, every time we played Fortnite, I was like, "Oh, you playing 2 weeks again?" He's all, "What?" I was all, 2 weeks Fortnite.
It's nice to meet you, Hook. We hug. Of course, we hug. Of course.
Oh, Hook loves
actually,
a hug.
I have a command. It's !hug, and then you can use the username if you want. Duchess. So you can give Leyoric a big hug because he absolutely buzzes off hugs. Like if you ever meet Leyoric, first thing you do is just give him a big hug. Don't even ask. Loves him. It'll make his day. Trust me.
Look,
I know him like 20 years.
I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you bad.
You won't do. You always say that. You always say that.
I do always say that, and I will do it.
But it is nice to see you as well, Duchess. Hope you're well. I would apologize in advance for Leyoric, but sure, you know what he's like. That guy gonna explode? What the fuck?
What the
Holy
fuck?
shit.
Well done.
Yeah, that was quick thinking, I have to say. Even for me. Hug the hook. Ah, touche. Touche.
Wait, look at him.
Thought you were going to hook Leyoric? You Uno reversed me. Well played. Well played. Right. I have a red herb.
For ages, I refused to give Hook a hug. And then he blindsided me at a funeral once and forced himself upon me.
I did. I got you good. Even Mrs. Hook up on that day.
Was Mrs. Hook there? I thought it was Legolas.
Oh no, it was Legolas, you're right. It was me and Legolas, that's right. Back.
It's bad that you're mixing your wife and your sister up.
Don't tell my wife. Me and the internet dad have talked about the specific amount of time we can do. He doesn't want to hug too long. I see that. I don't know. What's the perfect length for a hug then? 5 seconds? 5 minutes?
No, 5 seconds. 5 seconds is too long.
Oh, it's too short.
You're too short.
Is class. How dare you? How are you?
Where are you?
I don't know. Where are you? I don't know. I'm lost. There's a button down here.
5 7's too short. I think we agreed. No.
Simple tweet. Exactly, Teddy. Thank you very much.
I'm doing this all by myself. It's been a while.
Well, sure. At least you're doing something. Do change. How do I get
I
up?
will drive to your house and slap you. But I would have hugged where you cracked my back. A back crack's different. I used to be brilliant at them when I worked in Duns. We used to go back to back and hook arms, and I would lift the person and crack their back.
With parkour. How do I get up there? Like, I am stuck.
There's a ladder. Where are you?
Where are you?
Oh, is there a button? Is there like a tanker?
I press the button.
I can't see.
And I drop the tanker thing down.
No, you press the button that lifts it up. Wesley.
Oh, I'm not on the
roof. Raise me up. Yeah.
Right.
We come back on. I haven't seen you in 34 years. I was 7. I was too young.
34. We're the same age, give or take. Hug where you crack your back is the shit. Oh, Teddy, you were too slow. You were too slow.
Too late. Too late.
Oh, that's a cracker emote. Obama, there's no confusion. They're the same person. I'm just saying. Teddy, you're on fire tonight.
The door just got opened over there.
I see that.
What's
I'm going to assume it's just the one.
I don't think it's the one.
Oh shit. It's a trap.
Cage match. 1982 Hook. Why am I trapped?
Exactly. Why not you? Or me? Fuck out of here. Right, the grenade guys are handy though. The fact that they just blow up. Like that. That's great. Can you shoot from in there, eh?
Yeah. Oh.
Right, that worked. I don't want gold. Give me ammo.
I don't want gold.
Find coins at?
Gold, man.
Me. Right, can I... discard. No, I don't want to discard pack. I need space, man. Right, if I combine... There we go. Nice.
Ignitus, what's happening?
1992 Hook? 1990. Purchase. 1990. The end of 1990 right now. I'm in December, baby.
Oh, fair play, fair play.
Oh, a keycard. Green keycard. Right, okay. Can I give this to you? No, what use would that be? You're inside a cage. Right.
Stone cold. Stone cold.
I shoot the button. I can't.
Yep, that did it. Oh, there's a key card in that next section. Fine, I'll just wait here. I'll just wait here. But still very, very 90s.
There we go. Oh,
I
but
thought
still
you were on
90s,
about,
yes.
I thought you were on about the Robin Williams Hook film.
Oh, fantastic film. Fantastic film. Hook's my great-grandfather, with that good authority.
Oh, there's a thing running after you. It's a dog. It's a dag.
Okay. Gonna pet that dog.
No, it's actually just focusing on me now.
Okay. Yes, the 90s, the best generation there was.
No, the 80s, man.
Must be said. We were the last to grow up without fucking technology and all that shit. Perfect time. We were able to have our childhood without phones and internet and all that jazz, but then we were for the start of it.
Hey, our kids aren't going to have phones or internet once it comes next year.
That's true. That's true. That's true. No, that's a whole fucking debate in itself. Like the idea, sure.
Sleep. Oh shit.
But the whole digital ID, maybe not. I mean, because that's the counter to it. Like, but we'll see. Right, you should now be free.
Yeah, I know I am. Yeah, I am.
This part's pretty cool, I have to say. Right, so I can't. Ow, dick! I have my back turned. I can lift that again from up here, if there was any reason to.
No worries. Anyone not following Duchess as well puts on a phenomenal stream. Wonderful streamer. Really, really funny. Really, really nice community as well. So definitely drop her a follow.
completely agree. I've been on Dutchess a few times. Absolutely lovely. And thank you very much for following.
Where are you?
Stopping by. Much appreciated. And thank you for dropping the E as well. The E is silent. That's a beef me and Twitch I've had for a couple of years now.
I'm going to buy that one someday, you know.
I will come around and shit in your cornflakes if you do that. I'm telling you. Right. Now what's the story? Oh, there's a yellow marker on the map, isn't it? Have you health, by the way?
No. There's health up here, but I can't lift it.
Okay. Is that health there? That's fantastic. I don't have space. Of course I don't.
Thank you very much for the bits. And the gigantified. Who is it? That's that you? Who's?
Duchess. Gigantified.
MP.
Right. Hello. Line. Use.
Right.
There we go. Finally. There we go. Okay, make my way around. There we go. Nice. Ignitus, what has happened? Dude, I did not even see your name popping in chat. What is the crack?
I said hello to you because I love you more, Ignitus. It doesn't.
I'm sorry, I didn't see all the action there. Dial-up, I know. Dial-up was such a time. Like, see, trying to explain it to kids now, like, they just use the internet. Like, the fact that you were, like, loading a web page, and then your parents would answer the phone, you'd be like, no! Like, that's mental. Right.
Adson, thank you, Riddick.
What about
I don't know where you are.
No, I'm not far from you, actually. Oh, shit, there's a big guy behind me. Get out of here. There's two big guys.
I shouldn't have to get down there, but it won't even let me jump down.
There's a guy climbing up there. Climbing up to you, I think.
Oh, there you are up there.
Machine gun ammo, handgun ammo, I'll take that. Yeah, there's guys climbed up there, and I have no idea why. Because I was shooting them, and then they just said they climb up. Oh, somebody can press the button down below, is it?
Alright, I'll do
this. Hire one of us up. Right.
There is no button down below.
Oh, it's here. And this. Is there one on this?
Can you bring that one back down? I'll climb on top of it and see if it raises me up even higher.
Sure. Ah, probably will.
Yeah. Should it again?
You might be able to jump to like a new location or something. Right, that's it.
Yeah.
Quick, talk about how nice the people are and trap behind the ads. Oh, fucking ads. My ads are still 3 minutes away, but usually we both pause for ads, but not tonight. We're on a mission. No pun intended.
We have to save the world. Oh, fuck, dog.
Oh, well. Right, I'm not sure where I need to go here.
I think you wait there and I work my way around so I can get the switch.
Right, okay.
I'm up above you now.
Right. If I stand in this thing, you can probably hire me up. I'm assuming.
I would assume so.
Oh no, you can shoot that from up there. You can shoot that from up there. Go on.
What am I shooting? No.
That green button there, we see. I'll do it.
Ah, but does that not just...
So if I stand on this now, you can shoot it for me, and I can just follow
right, okay.
the path that you just took. You know what I mean? Right, go for it. There we go. You seen a brilliant World Cup meme? A little dog in a crowd watching, looking like it's fretting a little bit with the caption, "Oh no, another graveyard." Brilliant. I actually watched the first half of the France match earlier on, because most of the matches are stupid o'clock, which is really annoying. If you're a football fan like me. But I know it was 1 each in the France match, the last I was watching, but I haven't seen what the final score was. You killing animals?
Yes.
Rifle ammo?
I think we're over this way now, man.
Okay, there's a thing flashing behind me, though. On the map. Like a gold door here.
Oh no, it's a safe over here.
Ah, okay.
I think it's your way we have to go.
That's right. That's
We
not
can go your own way.
For anyone that did watch, what was the final score in the France match?
3-0.
Well, it was one each at halftime, so I doubt that.
3-0.
There we go, my ads are about to start. I'm just going to let them run. Apologies, no pausing for the ads. We're just...
one of the
we know
goals
we're
is
near the end of the game.
discontinued.
So. Go ahead, sir.
One of the goals is discontinued.
One of the... What? One of the goals?
One
Oh,
of the goals
discontinued.
discontinued.
Smart ass. Right, let's reload all our weapons and shit. I think I'm alright, actually.
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, sweet. Nice to be safe room. You don't get these very often.
Doesn't have the
Can I
music
take
though.
that
You
herb?
miss the music, don't you?
You do. You do. Any reel that I've posted about this, about like going live and stuff, I always put the wee music in there because it is great.
Mm.
Do you want a machine gun?
No. I have a machine gun, I have an AK-47.
I don't want to have shit, but I may keep it. I'll
So
no
are we
doubt I'll
in
run out of
chapter
ammo at some
6 now?
stage. We are. We're on chapter 6-1, probably near the end of 6-1 actually. I think there's only 6-2 or 6-3. But like, the last chapter's just a boss fight, I'd imagine.
And how do you know that?
Mm.
Let's just say we have a history together, and he's not the type to let grudges
One, that's not gonna be door bang. Hold on.
You must have done something to really piss him off.
It goes a bit beyond just pissing him off.
So, are you going to tell me?
Oh, if we get a certain distance from each other, you go over the radio rather than local. It's a pretty good wee feature.
Okay.
Where'd he go?
But I'm
Where's he
open
away?
to that.
I said my door was banging because of the wind with my window. I had to close it
right,
because I don't want to wake my son up. This is in the room next to me. You know what I mean?
Oh, there's a grenade launcher here. Or no, is it a
Ooh,
shotgun?
I have one actually. Right.
Looks like a pump action shotgun.
Oh, nice. That's what we have, isn't it? Oh no, we don't. No, it's not
I
pump
just have a
action.
normal shotgun.
I'll stick with what I have.
Jail.
You need the handgun ammo, or can I take it?
You can take it.
Nice. I'm assuming that pump action's probably stronger.
I don't know. I've leveled up mine a bit, so I don't really want to be dropping it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, we need two of us to push a button.
Oh, there she is.
What's going on here? Nothing that concerns either of you. We're not
Oh, that's alright.
doing
Turn around and walk
now
out.
spit it out.
Literally.
Tell us what we want to know.
Give a question.
Where's Wesker?
If you can
She is not wearing a uniform for a lab.
No, I don't think so.
Nobody's raised this point. It's not good enough.
She never get changed to anything more comfortable because she's on a boat.
I know why.
She's tough.
That outfit's not very buoyant if she goes overboard.
What's this?
My God. It's
Antidote?
whatever that
Chris,
is.
is this?
Whatever it is, Excella seemed protective of it.
Drink it.
Immunity or an antidote or something, I bet you. Right, immediately going to shoot one of these tanks. Because why wouldn't you? Right,
You
Flan, do
rifle
you want
ammo?
it? Go for it. No, go for it. Take it. Right, let's see. There's an herb. Don't have the space for an herb. I'll just leave it there.
Near
It's the
there.
second herb I've had to leave, which is annoying,
Yeah.
but...
Do you have a
That's what it
grenade?
is.
Do you have any grenades?
No. I don't.
I was going to hand you a
I don't
grenade.
have any inventory space either.
Near there. I kind of want to hold on to the grenade.
Aye, devs. Keep it.
Ah, shit. Right, room full, guys.
Right. Nice
I
shot.
lost the head.
I don't see anybody else. Oh,
Yeah, here. That headless horseman. Right, okay.
there's explodey barrels of it as well. Ah, shite. Will your grenade down there be useful? Then not hatch.
Yeah, but they've already left now.
It's like
Lots of
Gears of
explosive
War.
barrels, though.
Yep. That's not gonna work.
Can't fucking shoot. Oh shit! Guy right beside me.
Oh. You okay? Yep. Good job.
He's dead, Jim.
Was it deaf? Lead.
Here I go again on my own.
Nice. Do 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 do. You know what? I'll keep the flame rooms actually. For something bigger. He's dead. Shit, grenade. Watch yourself. Grenade guy's dead. I wish you could change shoulder.
Yeah.
That's one thing, like Uncharted.
You know what the
like,
problem is
coming
about
back in the
we
day.
just don't know what it is.
Nah, maybe. I love that mechanic in shooting games.
There's a guy up there.
Yep. Okay, shooting in barrels and doesn't do anything. Fantastic. Just blew himself up with a grenade. Moral. Oh, save me.
They chuck a grenade, didn't they?
Go for it.
Didn't know him.
That was a flash, mind you. Do we need to go down there? I wonder.
Yeah, I think we do,
Probably.
actually. Yeah.
Oh, shit. Look, yep, I was going to say an ambush. That was what is just about to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I would do one.
Oh, shit, I'm down there. Fuck.
You're fine.
Not with that
You're
attitude.
grand.
Yes. There we go. Quick. Don't have any shotgun shells. Stuck my pistol. I have flame rounds, but I want to keep them. Just in case we come across something huge.
Huge.
Huge ass. Like that. Watch yourself, step back. Didn't even die. What the fuck? Okay.
Don't get close to it. Yeah, that you killed me.
Yeah, I couldn't get close anyway because it would have just grabbed me. Right.
Shiver.
Well, that's a whole pile of bullshit. We have to do all that again. Fantastic.
Grand.
Right. Sweet.
Don't know how far back it's going to put us, though.
Hopefully not back to the very start. I think that'll be very harsh. If it does. Very harsh.
I just upgraded my shotgun.
I probably should. Fuck. Back to the very start. Okay, Phil, go for it.
Let's go.
Right. Cool. Nice. You've been busy. So if you one-shot someone on the head when they're not looking, it's an instant kill?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have to go down that hole.
Yeah. Ow, what the fuck? Fantastic. It's going to jump down here. Just get stuck on. Can you like dodge in this? No.
There is times that dodge prompt does come up, but it's not
Yeah.
for, you know, it's only when like boss attacks and stuff.
Wish you could. Be great. Oh shit, that's a grenade. There's a guy in here. Not anymore. Nice.
Do we go down the hole?
Yep, let's go for it. Right, I'll be wary of machine gun guy around the corner this time.
Nobody there this time. Wouldn't you know?
Topical. Pardon me. That's probably because we duelled last time. We had time to spawn and move up. Right, quick work on. No, he's not dead. Nice.
Yeah, I'm going to equip a grenade for this next guy that drops down.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, so I'm gone.
Work
He's
well.
dead.
Okay, grenade jack's pretty good then. We never really use him.
He had an explosive personality.
Oh. Take that mine. Nope. Don't matter. Right, there's a ladder to go up there.
Oh.
Oh
fuck.
shit.
Here we go.
He's walking. MGS. Right, there's a mine here, so fuck me. Inventory's full, of course it does. Combine. Right, now it's not full. Also, there's explosive tanks, so I'll have to use
Another
them.
cracker stream. Wish I could stay and see it. Teddy, not a problem. Thank you for calling in, buddy.
Teddy, likewise. Thank you very much, dude. Much appreciated. Really do. And having yourself a good sleep. Hopefully he'll walk and stand on that mine. All being well. Or we can shoot it. Yep, that worked. Oh shit, he's throwing a grenade at you. Sweet. I think he's come towards me. Not good.
And we're running low on ammo here.
It's, kinda, same. Right, the box on his back is metal, so shooting that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're meant to like melee him or something.
I'll try and get up close to him.
Yeah, I don't know, it doesn't matter. There must be something we're meant to do here. Maybe it is just explosions or something. What's up with? Let me check. Oh, health. Yeah, sure.
See if you can stun him.
Right. I'm not sure what with, but there's other items. Oh, there's another mine up here. I'll grab that. Ah, of course, now twice full. He had to shoot me in the ass. What? Can I jump in behind him?
Die. I'm alright.
Okay, okay. Shit. Shit.
He's dead. He's dead. He's dead.
Oh, nice. Nicely job.
We needed to kill him with a key card.
I got a key card. Good job. Right, do you want to stand near me and I'll heal us? Oh, you just found health too. Wait, but I'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
Use.
Ooh, nice one. Full heal.
It is. Need ammo, mind you, but
yeah,
that's alright.
Quite low on it. I'm okay with rifle ammo.
Yes. Yeah, pistol and rifle I'm fine, but like shotgun or something above machine gun ammo. Sure, I'll take it. You don't like it, I'll take it over. Need 2 key cards. Oh. Okay.
Well, he came from up this direction.
Ah. Nicely job. Upcoming. Good done. No, I was reading Billy's message here. Where's the safe? Ah, there we go.
There's handgun ammo there if you want it.
Mysteriously easy. I will take it, thank you. How's your week been, really? So far? Go, go, go. How is that laser coming out the bottom of the actual rocket? That doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
Shit, there's more than one.
Fuck, who the hell's shooting at?
You're getting bombarded there. I'm shooting one of them. There we go. One's dead. Oh, I see him down there. He's on the run. He's on the run.
Oh, there's no guy down there.
Another guy downstairs, yep. Oh, they've like metal plates on. Get to shoot them in the chest. That's why they're taking so much ammo.
Is that them dead?
I think so.
There's loads of handgun ammo up here.
Yeah, I'll take some. Just burn through a heap there. The fact that the game's giving us so much, not a good sign.
Yeah.
Combine with that. The herb up. Cool. Nope. Where's our box? What we get? Hang on. Sweet. Ah, game's ruined. Turn it off. It's been good so far. Fairly uneventful, which is what I like. That is the best kind of week, to be fair. Where it's pretty much, this is what I expected.
Yeah.
They are the best.
I'm actually back in the work tomorrow, so...
Are you in the office, are you?
No, I'm in the office Friday.
Right, okay. I have to go on at some stage this week because years ago we had physical like security tokens, like a key ring for like our admin accounts, and then they moved us to like apps that are on our phone. And now they're moving us back to physical tokens because this is on our phone secure as a physical token. So that's always good.
Yeah.
But they're going to collect a new physical token at some stage. Alright, sweet. Going up, up, up. Here, you know what? I was watching this the other day with Teddy when he was sick, and I was too harsh on it when it came out. But you know what's actually a really good film?
Hip-Hop Demon Hunters.
Demon Hunters.
Fucking brilliant.
Yeah. I was too harsh on it when it came out. I was wrong.
I'd be harsh on it. We were all its class.
I was like, it's okay, but no, it's actually class.
A new superior breed of humans, given birth by the progenitor virus.
Janitor virus? Okay.
The Wesker children were entrusted with endless potential.
It ain't perfect. It's a good time. It's a good watch. It's not going to win Oscars, like, but...
Yeah, I agree.
Are you saying I was manufactured?
I was to become a god.
What is man's obsession with trying to become a god?
Advanced race of human beings. However, all was lost with Raccoon City.
Which one?
Raccoon City 2.
Oh.
Despite that setback, your creation still holds great significance.
The Wesker's the only like complete prototype or whatever sample of what they wanted to do.
Which is a bit of a jump from what he was in the first game.
Yeah.
To face his own mortality.
The right to be a god.
Jesus.
That right is now mine.
Oh, you have to hand it to him? He's a one-man army, man.
The right to be a god. You.
Seen a gap in the competition.
Arrogant even until the end.
Open heart surgery.
Only one
Hey.
truly capable of being a god deserves that right.
Even looks like he's made out of metal. He's like the T-1000, I'm telling you. The hand through the chest now.
Yeah.
The right. With Ouroboros, I have that right.
Let's go.
Of chapter 6-1. Nice, nice. Nicely job.
Yeah, we're doing well. Freya, what is happening? Arax!
Freya,
Welcome
what's a
on.
crack? Oh, there
Thank
we
you
go.
very much for the raid. Perfect timing, too.
Perfect timing, right?
Oh, playtime is over. How fortunate for you.
Arax, welcome on. Were you still playing some Kingdom Hearts there? How'd you get on? How was your stream? For anybody that doesn't know me, my name's TheHooke. Once you stream on the me, you go on my Hall of Fame. I'm just going to jump up for a wee second. Hooke's going to join us.
Go for it. Go for it. Yep. I am here. I'm just reading something, sorry.
And Arax, you should be on here. Why are you not showing up? Why did it not show up? It should show up. I'll
Can't get the
manually.
staff, eh?
Can't get the staff. It should automatically come up because it goes on the JSON file. No, maybe if I refresh it. I find it most refreshing.
I'm actually sick at the minute, so not doing great. Hope everyone is well. Oh, Freya, sorry to hear that.
Oh, we're all
We are
the
doing
same.
alright, but sorry to hear that.
I'll
And
find it. If
Harax-
you go on the Hall of Fame anyway, I'll sort that anyway. Harax afterwards. How was your stream? How did you get on? Oh, thank you again for the raid. Welcome on, folks.
Took the grenade.
Do I have anything to sell here? I do. I have 3 of these. What are they?
Yeah, there's a heap of treasures to sell. I wonder if you have to keep in these or they all just...
I don't know.
Right, I'm going to buy some good ammo, is my thinking.
Kingdom Hearts is about rough at
I'll
times.
use that
It can be. Like, there's a lot of enemies that are very bullet spongy, and I think that's the bit that puts me off it sometimes.
It's a series I want to play at some stage. I don't know if it's stream it, mind you. But I do want to play it at some stage.
It'd be a good one to play with Teddy. Because of
100%.
all the old Disney
Yeah.
characters and stuff, he'd really buzz off watching you play it.
He would
But
love
it's a really good game as well. The first one, especially the first one, solid. Second one, brilliant. The third one, I
Right,
found the
okay.
enemies too spongy HP wise, and they just took ages to get down. Or
Right.
then again, it might have been a skill issue on my part.
Yeah. Look at wee Hooke just hanging out in the background on the raid screen. It is pretty cool. Flame runes. Right, I am ready.
I think it's good for
Sweet.
streaming. A lot of people are really involved in watching the experience with it. A lot of people have really fond memories of it. I love the fact that Squall was voiced by Angel from Buffy. Like,
Oh, no
that, I
way.
think's brilliant. Yeah. And
Yeah, that's
then,
pretty cool.
you know your man Haley Joel Osment, the guy from the wee boy from The Sixth Sense?
Yeah. The
He
Sixth
voices
Sense, yeah.
Sora.
No way. Right, okay. His sister
really-
does Mandy and the Big Bang spin-off.
Oh, right, okay.
Can't remember her name. But you can once you see them, then you're like, oh yeah, they're...
Ah, right, okay. Yeah,
Oh,
actually I can see it now. She's not having a good time.
Ooh.
Excella,
Squeamish.
what's going on?
Why? When I've done so much,
She needs a poop.
all for you.
Chris,
Ooh.
how nice of you to join us.
Wesker.
Is it going to mutate her now?
Don't worry. Your mission is
I don't like this big pile of dead people.
Ouroboros is
No.
on the eve of its appearance. 6 billion cries of agony will burn a new balance.
Sorry, Wesker, but not on my watch.
Albert,
Like, where to watch?
you said we change this forest together. Oh, why?
She reminds me of Gloria from Water Family.
Wesker doesn't give a damn about anybody.
Oh, anybody as well that's not following her ex, please drop me follow as well. Playing through Kingdom Hearts at the moment, brilliant streamer. Fellow bald man, but he wears it better than I do.
Show yourself.
Unfortunately, it's too late for you.
Her ex is lovely, to be fair.
Live to see the dawn. Sorry, Excella, but it appears Ouroboros has rejected you. Though you have been an excellent asset.
Excella was an excellent asset.
He must have tricked there. Excel asset.
I know, I know.
Egypt. Yeah, she's going to be a boss fight. Back. Oh, she's going to absorb all them.
That's
Oh,
not
shit.
good.
Nope. No bueno.
Talk about going down and dragging everybody with you.
Holy moly. Right, this is going to be another weak spot fight, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I would imagine so. We running?
Or we don't fight at all. Or
It's not even a quick QT event, we're just up
no.
More than none, welcome on. Thank you for the gigantfied me with a gun. the most dynamic and action-ready version of me.
That's what we need right now. We need that version of Leyoric. Where's the wig?
We do. I need the wig, that's what it is. I need the hair. The hair's where all my powers are held, like Samson.
So we did just run away.
Yeah.
So now what? You think our weapons can hurt that thing?
Oh.
I don't know. We gotta
Lovely.
get the hell out of here before it destroys this place.
Let's go flame rounds.
Lurk, got a call, no problem.
No worries at all, Freya. Hopefully you feel better soon, by the way. Come on. Oh shit. It's just ramming going to try and get us at times. Fantastic.
It seems like it.
Oh, excuse me?
Combine.
McKenz,
No.
why? Why
What
did
do
you do
you say?
this?
What did he do?
No.
He's
No.
redeeming the dog treat.
I'm not gonna give you a treat if you call me that. What do you say?
Got a power food. I think so. That's our plan.
Yeah. We're on chapter 6-2 now, I believe. And there's 6-3's the end. So, probably shoot this power through.
Where are you?
I'm in here. There's wee lockers and stuff in here. Ooh. Found a gold chalice. That's exactly what I need right now. Oh shit. Right above me, I think. Yeah, there's a vent right above my head. It's a trap.
Because Cleo desires it. Not in the middle of a boss fight. Cleo. Where are you, pup? Cleo.
Ah, shit. So we're going to reanimate them corpses?
I would hope not.
Alright, doesn't like fire.
Oh,
Play out for free.
oh, she's here now. She's here now.
Oh, you're alright. Go for it.
Here you go, pup. Yeah, we're trying to finish the game, and Mackenzie's ruining the flow. Because he wants to give the dog a treat. He wants to be nice to the pups. There we go. She got a treat. Dog has been fed.
Cleo has to be fed.
Apparently so. Have we been split up?
No. You're just down the end of the corridor. I'm not.
No, I'm not. I'm upstairs.
You're upstairs, but I'm literally just behind you.
Right, okay.
I think. Yeah, you're just in that room. Okay.
2 bosses left. One of them is a big hunk. Ooh.
Right, okay. So how far do you think we are from the end then? Come on. Not that we're like rushing through, but it's just a genuine question, obviously, because it's lit and all that. Come on.
One of them
don't worry
things.
about it.
One of them things.
One of what things? Oh, the big... Oh, shit. Okay. Can I stand back there? That didn't work. Watch yourself. Nice, I think you got it. Nicely job.
Still getting back up.
Oh shit, man. Perfect. Okay. That worked.
That'll do it. Bridge keycard, so we need to kill him anyway.
Bridge keycard, right.
This is it.
Investigate. Spencer's notebook? Just received word that Raccoon City has been wiped out. Americans finally took the action against us. I hope the irony of using the very military machine that was supposed to protect them from the foreign attackers kill their own people is not law.
So this must be where Chris was during Resident Evil 2.
Right, okay.
No. That won't make any sense because Jill was on just before. No, must be Raccoon City 2 they're talking about.
Ah, must be.
As long as the bosses don't have 6... I don't even know if they do or not. We'll find out, I suppose. It's weird they haven't patched that out yet. Like, they're still allowing you to buy the game.
It's really stupid, like, in my opinion, but... That's what...
That is no first can hear timeline. That is also true. But then again, that note could have been written anytime.
Yeah. Is there actual gaps in the story?
That's
like things like that. Machine gun ammo because they're shite. Oh, what are you doing?
There's a door.
Oh, you're upstairs, right? Come on. Come on. Love how that thing's just staying outside and not trying to kill us.
Yeah, it's very polite.
We're going to go back outside, aren't we?
We shouldn't come on for. I'm at the door.
I didn't mean to.
Don't be cheeky to me.
We're probably back outside now. Right.
Yeah.
Why?
Because we need to.
No, that's where we need to go. But like.
For science.
We were saying.
Incendiary grenades.
Oh, yes. Let's see.
This is probably where we fight it.
Alright. I don't think there's a lot of crossovers. So right now, what's Leon doing? Who knows? Right, okay. Are they kind of standalone stories then? Or which Resi games are coherent, as in like they have a consistent story? Get out of the fucking menu. Jesus. That's a shot. Say so myself.
Oh, is it throwing shit at us now?
Yeah, we just have to shoot the big bulbs as usual. I'd have the shots, be right.
Weirdly enough, these wee globs just thrown out have ammo.
Great. Very considerate. Maybe she wants to die, you know? Good shotgun shots.
That worked.
Okay. So we're not 60 FPS locked now.
You're coherent. You're mass coherent. Turbo, what's happening? Welcome on.
Oh, fuck, help. I'm getting picking. Worms on me.
Thank you for signing the ledger.
No.
Oh, we had 156 today.
Ooh. Right, I'm not doing much damage here. Yeah, I have... Why do I have Magnum ammo? I don't even have a Magnum. Jesus, every time I go to do something, a cutscene happens.
2 and 3 are coherent. 4 and 6 is years after 2 and 3. 4 and 5 happen a few months after each other. And we're not talking about 6 and 7. 6, 7. Sorry.
Whoa.
I think we need to climb up.
Okay.
I don't know why I think we need to climb up. We just... Oh, it's aim at those things in the sky.
Flash grenade, that'll probably help. Oh shit.
What? Got whapped.
You. Could have stood near you, that's my bad.
That's how we defeated 10 tickles.
What the fuck? Time I zoom in, it disappears on the scope. There we go. Can't fucking see it. My god, man. Just took that pistol. Trying to use the rifle to do more damage, but can't bloody see it. Whenever it zooms in, it's too zoomed in. Oh shit. Oh shit.
How'd that work?
Somehow I dodged that. You die. I stand over here in the edge. What happened to good old-fashioned health bar? It is quite convenient, now that you say it, that these things are dropping ammo. Right?
It is so weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like enemies and MMOs that drop fucking...
Bollocks.
They drop bollocks now.
You picked up health, didn't you? Nice.
But enemies that drop money, you're just like, why?
Yeah.
Why did they, huh?
Why did it change the button for duck? It was A minute ago. Is that fair? Just mash both. There's the answer. Good man, thank you. No, we're getting an aura event here. Here we go. Right. Back here, blue ahead. Right, are we making... We're making progress, aren't we?
I think we're doing.
In this thing?
Doing alright.
Got that. Good job. Ah, there we go. Oh shit. Oh, bollocks. Stupid wee minion things attacking me.
Got him.
Nice.
Really low ammo
I
though.
look at shotgun spells. Holy shit. Been a while.
Been a while. Sorry, chat. We're locked on at the moment.
This game just doesn't land well for chat, unfortunately. It hasn't from the very start. Oh, progress.
Maybe.
Whoa, it's got a big main head on it now. But now more wee things. By the bolts. Of course I am. Fantastic.
It needs to stop giving me grenades. Grenades don't work.
Can't believe streamers are ignoring us. Sorry, folks.
We don't need streamers. We can be our own ship. Fair play.
Sorry, folks. I do feel bad about it. It's something, if you go back to like the earlier streams we played at this, it was something I kept calling out that was annoying me because I couldn't chat the chat properly.
Oh, no.
Right. We're back to this phase again.
Help around down here. Oh.
More of these things. And I'm going to put a mine down in the middle there.
I have one bolt left. That's me done.
That worked. What time event?
I'm about to die.
Don't think I have any health. I have a red, but that's no good to me. What time event? Yeah, bollocks. Try and get you.
Thank you.
Right, I think you have a green herb, I have a red. Never mind.
Shiva! No, we catch up, we catch up, we catch up.
Catch up is right.
Sim 7 and 8 are set years, and the years they released. The only games I actually rely on prior to 7 and 8. Looking for them 10 tickles. Imagine dating Excelia and she shows up like that. Hey, you wouldn't say no. Hammer Dawn, that would be handy, wouldn't it? Uppies.
Oh, that's
we don't need strippers.
Let's see. Ticker grenade.
I had loads of landmines and I didn't even need them.
Why'd I have ammo for fucking magnum? I don't have a magnum. Flash rounds. Let's see. Acid rounds. Might not be a bad shout either. I'll remove the grenade because we get them from drop.
Yeah.
Right, so I have rifle, pistol, rocket launcher. I have no shotgun shells, or do I? No, I don't.
Would the rocket launcher work on it?
The RPG, mate? That's a fair point.
I don't have the money for one. It's good.
Hang on.
GG, I'm on her side. Yes. Uses a game. I can't stop chatting. Capcom. Yeah, they are the best. They made it. They made it. Looks like we made it.
Rocket launcher 10k. Yes, purchase. Now, ammo for it is another thing.
Ammo. Is what you're looking for.
Right, I might take the ammo we usually get. I'm going to remove that. The rocket launcher in. So, rifle, rocket launcher, pistol, grenade launcher. Okay.
You ready?
Absolutely stock ammo. Yeah, or weapons, I should say. So.
Oh, good. It put us back here as well.
All again. Seriously?
No, it's not all again. It's just here. You ready?
Yep.
Can we skip a cutscene?
This is the one. Thank you. No, we can't actually. Oh, you can. Listen back. Sweet. Show yourself. Show yourself.
Shoot her. Come on, Betsy.
Ah, pause. Right, I'm wasting him because he keeps moving. Right, watch for the quick time events. Mash A and B, or A and X, sorry, is usually every on Xbox controller. Usually works. Keeps giving us grenades.
I think that's for the guys on the ground.
Guys on the ground? What?
Yeah, the wee slimy dudes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
This is the wrong guys. This is the one. Ready's right.
This isn't. We are going to do it. You're right. Fire does work well. The only thing with this grenade launcher, it takes a while to actually hit your shot. The final stage now. This is the final stage, isn't it?
Is it?
I believe so. There we go.
Is that it? Rocket launcher, done.
Rocket launcher.
Nice. GG.
Nice.
G to the fucking G.
Really, you were right.
This is the run.
We have one more fight.
This is the end.
We both got an A for that. You can view Excella Gione in the library. Okay. G fucking G. Thank you. Thank you. Right, let's organize your shit now before this final fight. I think I might bring a rocket launcher again, to be honest.
Might be an idea.
That worked quite well.
It's more a lack of ammo is my problem at the moment.
Yeah, same.
Ready both. That's all. Thank you, Uncle Flange. We, you know, that's a clarification I needed in life, just to know that you were proud of me.
Well, it does help. Thank you. Right, I'm ready. Sweet.
Well,
yeah, folks, apologies. It sticks in my head, trust me, that I can't like chat as much as I always do playing this game, but it just doesn't lend itself well. Like, you go back to when we co-opted Portal, and we were able to chinwag as much as we wanted. Whereas this game, it's just so action-heavy. There's no downtime. Oh, you got a rocket launcher as well. Nice.
Hey, fuck. Let's go on. Rescue for the basket.
Save them for Wesker. If he's next, which I'm assuming he probably is. Save them
and
for
the
him.
Strata being ignored, ha, Bearish. We shall both... Our next game will be Monster Hunter, because we ignored you so much.
He's actually serious about destroying the entire planet.
I don't agree with that. There's no health bars. Can't play it.
Like Reddy said, we vibing. I appreciate it. I don't think we're supposed to go here.
Up here for nothing. Yep. Never meant to drop down over here. Nope.
Or maybe just
back
go
out
back out the way we came.
Yeah. Oh, here. There's a button. Here. What's this do? Nothing. Never mind.
No.
Never mind.
Agreement by proxy.
Just need to find Wesker now. Kill him.
John Wesker.
Agreement by proxy? No. Come on. You know what I actually had a thought about today? And we've done it offline, but we've never fun co-op in a Halo game sometime.
That'd be cool. Legendary.
Yeah. ODST or something. Something different.
Ooh, ODST's good.
Or just Halo 1, like, or whatever. Like, no. It would be cool sometime in the future.
When Jill said Wesker was planning to spread
The thing is, though, see with Halo coming out now in July, like, streaming's going to be oversaturated with it in a wee bit.
Oh, fuck
Halo
that.
4. I like Halo 4. I like
Halo 4 is
Halo
great. The story's fantastic.
Jill,
The art direction shit. The story's fantastic.
Listen to Linkin Park.
Yes. That could get me in.
But the virus is unstable. In order to maintain a balance, he must inject himself regularly with a serum.
So if we cut the supply of serum, he loses his strength.
Affirmative. But he just took a dose, so it's going to be a while before he needs another one.
It'll be a while.
What a dose.
Listen, Excella said that the amount administered has to be precise. So if he injects too much, it should act like a poison. I think she used a serum labeled PG678.
Is this actually going to end up like Metal Gear Solid 4 with us injecting them as we fight on top of a ship?
Yeah. Seems like it.
You need to find that serum. Excella always kept it with her.
Like what?
That's why she came.
Jill, come in. Jill.
Shit.
Chris.
It's a GPS phone. It shouldn't have lost signal.
Maybe she lost signal. Maybe she's on like a Nokia
Well.
3210.
Let's give it a shot.
Maybe. Give it a shot. Co-op some Halo 6. Oh. I'm like you're talking to my soul.
Can't fly around in that without getting shot down. Oh god.
Where? Oh, do we go here?
Plane can't get shot down.
Yeah.
If it does, we will initiate.
Cool.
It's just like
Dexter, welcome. I'm proud to be bald. Thank you very much for the Gigantified.
Looks that way.
Appreciate it. We are Getting to the end of this, I think. We're getting close to the end.
The final stretch. Right, if there's a lull moment here...
You're a lull moment? This does not look like a lull moment.
Nope.
This looks like an unlull moment.
Yeah. I should hold it in. I was half expecting us to be on a timer there, not gonna lie.
Oh, he got fired.
Yep. Oh, there's a herb there, but I can't pick it up. No, I don't need it. It's fine. Right. I say we hustle. Ignore as much as we can. Just get there.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we're just going to waste ammo.
Yeah. Oh, no, I thought that was you.
Nice. There's a lever here.
Can't leave her with her, can't leave her without her. How goes it? I need to bring Shiva back to the future. She's a bad arse. She does a phenomenal backside.
She does. Got a hand on Star Blade.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Stop. Thank you. Damn.
There's a green hair.
That's right there.
Let's go.
Hit. Jesus, your gun's doing some damage.
Can't lock any more ammo though. Giant Uncle Blanche, yes! Let's go! Blanche, do what? Does this count as bald? No, you must shave it.
No.
V1 with the bald.
Shotgun shells, I need those shotgun shells, right? I need... Combine... Scared. Finally. This game does not want to give me shotgun ammo. Mental.
Nope.
Right, so across this way? Well, we just have to jump the gap, right, okay. Oh shit, there's lasers. There's lasers!
Them fucking spidery things are there too. I can see them hanging about.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Say guys, I'm off. No, don't worry, Ignitus. Thank you very much for calling on.
Ignitus, all the best, good sir. Thank you very much for coming on, hanging out. Much appreciated. Sorry, I couldn't really chinwag you as much as usual.
Blanche, why do you look terrified now? Oh, there's someone with a rocket launcher somewhere.
Any bait? Oh, they're up high. Got him. Jesus, McKenna scared the shit out of me.
What did he do? Jump scare?
He's walk on with the exclamation mark me.
Yeah.
Scared the shit out of me. Well played, sir. Well played. There's a lever here.
Can't leave her with her. Can't leave her without her. Oh, no. There we go. Lever. Let's go.
Need to pull the horse. Shit. Right. I'll get this out. Go, go, go. Nice.
Looks like a conspiracy came true, Flange. I know. Like those spidery things are coming.
Oh shit, okay. Jesus Christ, how many ammo is it going to take to kill these things?
I don't know, man. I think they may just be running at this point. Shit, he got me. I'm stabbed. No.
Oh man, at least we got a checkpoint right
damn
there. Right, I don't think we can kill him. Way on here, lads, up at 6:30 AM for work tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your stream. Mackenzie, thank you very much, man. Sorry we can't really chat about you too much. But enjoy your sleep, dude. And hopefully you have a good day at work tomorrow as well.
We're back here.
Yeah, we got a checkpoint right before this, which was fantastic. There's bars behind that door. But we must have to wait for it to open or something. We can go upstairs, it looks like.
We could probably go up the stairs. We could look round.
Alright, let's do that. Try and follow the enemies a wee bit. I mean.
All that shit wagon at the start. You could be stuck on this section for 10 months. I know.
Right.
We were too ambitious.
Just to work better because we can funnel them a wee bit. Unless we can go on indoors. There's a green light above that door. Oh shit. We can. Okay.
Oh shit, there's one behind me.
Shit, I'm in here. There's a closed door. Shit. I think it's dead.
I think he's dead. We both said that.
What the fuck is this? Nitrogen rounds? Oh, I nearly left it.
Did you go in through that door?
Yeah, it's just to be safer.
Oh,
shit.
Looks like we need keys to get in the next door, so I think these two have to die.
Yeah, I think so.
Where are you?
Hello, I'm picking up good ammo here. Coming out.
I'm down.
What the fuck are you? I'm nowhere near you.
I'm still in the wee... Hold on. Where the fuck are you?
I'm right beside you.
Thank you.
Right. Oh, our RPGs, forgot about them. Good shit. Did you one-shot them with the RPG here?
One of them.
Nice, I'll get the other one now. Because I can get him. That worked. Right, they did drop a key card.
Let's get out of here.
Yep.
Although we don't have them now for Wesker. There's a bit of a...
Yeah, true. Nice. Right. Oh, behind us. So, how did we get the yellow arrow? How'd you? Oh, downstairs? Is that how you got there?
Yeah, just going downstairs.
Yeah, okay. I was upstairs, you see, so it was grayed out for me. That's what I was wondering. Okay. I'm coming. Right, sweet. I'm right behind you.
News keycard. Nice. They came in handy, they did, but I think we wasted them. Instead of using the lost. Kraken didn't welcome them.
Yeah.
Thank you for the 5 stream streak.
Come on, everybody!
5 stream streak, what a guy.
Can't explain it.
Yeah, I hear you. Don't let your guard down for a second.
Oh. That's intense.
No, it was on a boat. Wasn't it a tent? Every week.
Every week is right. That's sick.
There's no way out this time.
Don't you two ever tire of failing in your mission?
Yeah, we both die.
You've really become quite
a self-esteem issue now at this point.
If they land perfectly on Chris's hit. Oh, we're going to get separated, aren't we? Oh, what the heck is Nightcrawler? Really need a pee.
Everybody's matrixing.
So, he can kill us. Why hasn't he just kill us? You know what I mean?
Humans come one step closer to self-destruction. I'm not destroying the world.
He's pretty badass, Tomahawk.
Tomahawk is 100%.
Oh yeah, definitely. Wesker is too though.
Whoa.
Oh.
This guy's alive.
This may be our only chance.
Do it.
I think we're straight on the boss fight here.
Do it.
Do it. Oh, ads are in a minute, folks. We're just going to roll for them.
Now, Chris? Do you actually think you can defeat me?
Either way, I'm not gonna stop until I'm dead.
Well then,
Wesker just shoots him in the head.
time to kill you quickly.
He's a mustache to be even cooler.
I'll see you dead.
So, Wesker is the blonde Tomahawk then? What we've established. Oh, there's an RPG here. Fantastic. Like that. Now, I'm assuming we have to weaken him somehow?
Levers from the pole.
Or we shoot him with the RPG? Right, for anyone that's played this, if you have a light up, feel free.
There's levers. I think what they call levers.
Yeah. Let's see.
And there's
What
a
that
ladder.
did? Why did I put that down?
Only a handful of humans truly matter. Everyone else is just
Lights off. RPG. Give him heroin.
so now I have to separate
Good man yourself.
this chaff from the wheat. And with Uro,
Oh shit.
Oh.
As you do. He's just going to throw him at us.
Fucking us too. Man.
Love it. I have to admit, I quite like Wesker in this. He's pretty cool.
Ah shit! I picked up Magnum ammo with it. Fuck! Wait with you! Wait with you! He's right beside me. He's right beside me.
He's right beside
Running. Running. There's ammo up here for rockets.
Shit, he's right beside me.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to get the rest of the lights off though, don't we?
What lights?
Tomahawk said lights off, RPG, give him... Oh, so we just need to RPG him now at this stage.
I think we
Right.
turned the lights off, except for one maybe. Down there.
There's still one on. Yeah. Never's turned the lights off and Whiskers is wearing sunglasses so he can't see exactly Happy Irishman. Like, it just makes sense. A fantastic game design. Shit, it's right behind. Isn't it? Yep.
So do we turn the lights back on now and blind him? Is that what we're supposed to do?
I don't know. He's not albino, though.
He's right beside you, so I'm going to run past and put the lights on and see if it blinds him and then hit him with the RPG. No,
Ah,
the
I
lights
found the
don't go
lever.
back on.
Hold on, hold on. Hold on.
There's RPG rounds everywhere. And
There
I
we
don't
go.
have one.
There we go.
I'm
Lights are
curious.
I have an RPG. I got
Yeah,
one.
but I don't.
you can't hide forever.
Oh shit, he caught it? What the fuck?
Can we inject them now
I
while
would
he's
inject
fighting me?
him. Aye. Go for it.
No, no we can't.
I need bullets for it now. Where are you finding all the RPG bullets?
They're all upstairs.
Right, okay.
There's one over there. See where I am? There's one right beside me.
I can see it. Yeah. Did you get him injected there?
What? No, I
Did
didn't
you
know.
inject him? No? No? Okay. That's all right.
Although I can shoot him, which is good.
Yeah. Stop hitting
Nope,
it down,
he's
Chris, you
running.
twat. Oh, I'm going to batter Chris. He keeps putting the bloody RPG down. I'm trying to slash the boxes. Right, where is Whiskers?
Did you reload the RPG?
Yes. Oh, I can only hold one at a time. Right, I'm running around looking for ammo. Sorry. Right, I need to get back down here.
Oh, I'm upstairs with you.
Right, okay.
He should be coming up
You
pretty
right
soon.
behind me? Yeah, he should come up. Oh no, he's in the dark. You can't see.
Oh, is he putting the lights back on?
I don't think of myself as a kid.
He did.
Shoot the rocket after he catches it. Ah, right, okay.
Right,
Makes
okay.
sense.
And even kings bow to gods.
A
Shut the
god?
fuck up, Whisker.
I think he's completely lost it.
Oh my god.
Lights again.
Right, so do you hit
Got
him
the
with
light?
RPG now?
No, I'll do it now. He's about to teleport to them. Right. Nice.
Do it! Inject him!
Do it! Nope.
Oh,
we
shit.
got it. Yeah, we just have to do that a couple more times. Oh, I'm nearly dead.
You're nearly dead. Right, I'm running to find ammo here for this RPG. Thank you for the tip, Happy Irishman. Just what we needed.
There's no point in hiding.
Yeah, well, I kind of need you, buddy.
You can't hide forever.
Right, lights are back on, aren't they? Or are they?
I don't think so.
Right, okay. It's just light up here, up the top, then. Right, I'll drop back down and get him. Are you down below?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, he's back for rockets
he's
again.
doing nothing here.
Oh shit, I got that right in the fizz. No, I didn't actually.
Right, he's down beside me now.
Oh shit, he's right beside me. Bollocks. He just punched me in the fizz. What, I missed? Right beside him? Bullshit. Right, I need to find ammo, so I'm going again.
Boop, 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 boop.
Damn it.
You're merely postponing the inevitable.
Right beside him. Bolt went right through him. I don't want handgun ammo. Jesus, give me rockets. Good game. Oh, damn it. Where's he? Oh, fuck, he's right beside me. Do you see any rocket ammo?
Over there in the wee display case. There's loads of them.
You can't hide forever.
Oh, fuck. Okay. Right. Let me get there.
See if you can get him now.
Yeah.
I don't think he can see us. Oh.
He's down below. That's no good. You need to be on the same level as him before shoot.
Yeah, I'll get down
Just want
so I
to get in
can
time.
stab him.
I mean, here, hold on. Stand still. Stand still. By health.
Oh, happy days.
Just accept your fate.
There we go. Right, he's beside us. Never mind. Jump.
Run.
Okay. In the bottom. Right. Need to wait on him to come down now. He's right behind us, I think.
No point in hiding.
You want to stop?
You're merely postponing the inevitable.
Where the fuck did RPG go?
You sat it down when you healed me.
Fuck. Okay. Stupid mechanic. I can carry me. Oh, he's turned the lights back on. Oh shit. Right, I'm gonna let you get that light. I'm gonna get the RPG.
Yeah. It's just you anyway.
Yeah.
But
Gonna
that
keep
light's
running.
off. Try and keep him away from that far side, because I think he's controls that light so he can't turn it back off.
The side I'm at now.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yes, you can't hide forever. I'm in italics. So don't do
Oh,
it there
it's
because
pretty
you
good.
can see the rockets there. Bring them over that side.
You can't hide forever.
Right. Let's let him get close now.
Apparently we can hide forever.
Right.
Come on.
Where is he?
Right. Oh, he's way
In the
back
back.
up to the rockets.
Your struggle
Oh,
is
okay.
over.
Yeah, he'll come back
That's
down
grand.
now.
Yep. So wait for him to come around the corner.
There, I have him here.
Right. He dodged it, for fuck's sake, man. I am going to flop. I'm actually going to flop. I'm wasting my time, Wesker. I'm dying to pee. The kid.
You're in trouble now.
Oh, I'm absolutely busting. Can't pause. Shoot.
Can you inject him?
Don't know.
No, it's alright.
I'm gonna
No,
get in.
he's recovered.
Run out of bolts. So I'm going to be fucked.
Let me pee pee.
Let me pee. I know. I'm getting graphic because I have to pee. This is a trend. When I stream, actually, every time I'm on a boss fight, I have to
See if
pee.
you can keep him over that side. Turn around, get
Yeah.
him. Get him when he drops down.
Oh, what day drops here?
Postponing the inevitable.
They're actually waiting until he gets down.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait till he comes down.
And then I'll try and put some bullets on them. Right.
There we go. Finally. Frick. Oh, for fuck's sake. Maybe you're right beside him for him to do... Shut.
So do we both need to be right beside him for that?
Must be. Right, I need to get ammo again for the rocket.
You?
He's chasing me again.
He's
It's
chasing
excitement, makes you want to pee. That, and probably because I drank a cup of tea and like a pint of Pepsi Max as well. Right. Come back around. Again. Right. Now back downstairs.
Right, he's back down again.
Yep. Right, two of us stand beside. Oh shit. Kick me in the face. I'm nearly dead. I'm one hit from death.
Could you get him with the rocket launcher? Oh, he
nope.
Dodged again. Fucker. He is gonna pull up.
I'm actually gonna headbutt something. I'm dying to be. I'm probably gonna have an accident there. I can't pause.
Nappy time, boy. Nappy time. Let's go.
Do you know what? I don't care if I die here at this stage because I'll get to pee. There's no hell feeler. And I'm dead.
I can't get up here.
Right, I'm going to pee. Be right back.
Oh, that was good. I'll wait for him. Control scheme can change the mouse and keyboard. What is the crack? Look at a UTA. Can't hold it on like a big boy. That's the problem. Oh, that was good crack. Right, so I think what we have to do is turn off all the lights, hit him with a rocket, but he seems to be dodging the rocket, so I don't know if we have to shoot him first to try and stun him, then hit him with a rocket, then shoot the rocket, then go over and hit him. The game left. They decided to leave. Shit. Well, that's fun. I'll say it when he comes back. Because he decided to leave and fuck it up. Oh, Hooke, you silly sausage. Bum, 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 bum. Kill the lights, RPG. Because he'll use his dodge animation, that'll ruin the RPG shot. Yeah, but there was times he was in the dark, we were still shooting the RPG, and it was, Cleo, go, there you go. We were shooting the RPG, and it was still missing him, so I don't know whether we have to kind of shoot him first, and kind of stun him. And how many times do you have to do it? Game's old and dumb. Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of glitchiness in the mechanics. Like, that's two bosses now that are affected by 60 FPS, which is mental. Good crack, though. I'm enjoying it. You have to turn the torch off on the RPGs, too. There he is. He's back. I've kicked us out of the game.
What?
Kicked us out.
Oh, man.
All because you had a pee.
Yes. Well,
you have to turn
let's
the
just say
torch off on the RPG too.
Turn the torch off in the RPG, right. I feel better now. I was really crab it there because I was dying to pee.
You crab it?
Right,
no.
okay.
Yeah. You think looking at the two of us, I would be the crab it one?
Game is old and dumb. I agree there. It is a bit stupid. But it's got better as it went on. Right, lights. Get a UTA, I know. I was absolutely busting. What was that B button there? I swear, for anyone that's new enough, I'm usually very chatty. Quite the opposite.
That is true. That is true.
Right, I've got the RPG now. And Wesker's right behind me.
Yeah, I'm out of the game.
Oh, shit.
That's what I told you. Kick me out of the game because you left.
My bad. Hold on. My bad. Forgot.
I might just log in the Hooke stream and just enjoy watching this.
Sorry. Right, hold on.
Crack. Hey. Don't crack. So, two
Right, if I hit
questions.
start
Where are
game,
you
it
up
should
to?
take me to the organize.
Me,
There we go.
I am in the hospital at the moment. That's where I
Why did
is
it kick you out of the
indeed
game? So stupid. Okay, invite sent.
There we go. Same them. I'm a bit stuck. I don't know if you're before or after me though in the hospital.
Are you back on Silent Hill 2 tomorrow night?
Probably, yeah.
Sweet. Look forward to it. Aye. Then I'm a whole fire in a question, right? Fair enough. Apart from health, we don't really need much in this, don't we?
I've just added a wee bit of health there.
Yeah, I think I'll do the same. It's not a bad idea. I have 2 slots.
Then a whole fire. No, fire away the question and see if I know the answer to it. I think I got a good chunk of the hospital done. I remember where I was now. I was in the director's office and I'd done the safe. Or I got all the bits for the safe and I just had to figure out the code for it. Copper and lead rings. Copper and lead rings. You're a bit ahead of me, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm not that far yet.
Okay, lights. Let's do
one
it.
more to get. Right, lights are out. Let's go.
Oh. Are you near me?
No. Do you have the RPG?
I do.
Right there beside you now.
Shoot.
This planet is overpopulated. Only a handful of humans
Fuck is it?
truly matter.
Right, we need to be close to him, don't we? Do I come over closer to me?
So now,
Oh, you dick. You just turned the light
I'll
back
get
on.
that. You get the RPG. I'll get it. Nope.
I have the RPG. There we go.
Right, we both get right up them whenever I get this, okay?
Oh,
you ready?
Me too. Okay, yep.
Go.
Do it now! Give him the shot!
It wouldn't let me do anything.
No, I think we have to weaken him. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll go find out.
This is the run.
You know the ammo's upstairs. This better be the run. Ready? You're
There's
right.
ammo over here. I'm over here.
Where?
In there.
On that corner? Shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your struggle is
That's such a flex. The fact that he's left on a big rocket and he's chucking it at us.
Yep. He's awful aiming though.
They would. Oh, big time. He just froze it regardless if you're standing behind something.
There he is.
He dodged. I hate this guy. Just gonna say it. I loved him a minute ago. The fact that they can dodge an RPG in his face. Quite annoying. Right. Go up to get ammo.
there you are.
Let's check out this smash.
There I am.
Why is it let me pick up the round, but I can't pick up the RPG? Why does that make sense? Oh, for fuck's sake, man.
Oh, do you already have an RPG?
No, I'm trying to pick up the RPG. I'm dead. This fucking game. Let me pick up the RPG. Stupid game. Yeah, dead.
Ooh, close.
Right, back downstairs. I think there's a light on. Yeah, there's right beside me.
Yeah, bring him over here.
Yeah. Need to make sure he's not on a combo and doing his stupid martial arts crap. I won't be able to hit him.
Only those with.
There we go.
There we go.
Right, so that's going to weaken him. Or is it going to kill him? I wonder.
Or make him stronger.
It's going to make it a phase 2.
I would say so.
Did it work?
I think so.
Since he knows me, shoot him. So, oh, yep, phase 2. His sunglasses didn't flinch. Parkour.
He's getting away. Hurry.
Ooh, he's just bailing.
Gulag. We call work. How do
Gulag.
you have? Oh, appreciate it. Thanks, thank you.
Enjoy your work.
Actually, no,
Dexter.
this is strange. Got a bit interesting. Playing Syntopia? Never heard of them.
Syntopia, I've seen a few people playing it. She's miles. Oh, never mind. I was about to say she's miles away. To recover. Right, so we're not fighting on it yet.
We're leaving.
Stealth bomb.
This is it. Game's over. RE6 starts. This end of a cliffhanger. A literal cliffhanger off the side of a plane.
We're Leon in RE6 though, aren't you? In the main campaign. I believe.
It seems I may have underestimated you, Chris.
Save it, Wesker. There's no one left to help you now.
I don't need anyone else.
Gonna make a campaign worth. Well, Mush loves it, you know. RE6 is his favorite.
I think it's the only one we're going to play, TheHooke.
In less than 5 minutes, we'll reach the optimal altitude for missile deployment. Ouroboros will be released into the atmosphere, ensuring complete global saturation.
Thank you, thank you. I'm sure there's a fight here. Or is it just a cutscene?
Cutscene for now, I think. Then a fight. Unless it's a very small boss arena.
Yeah. These cutscenes with Wesker have been very good, I have to say.
Yeah,
I've liked
very
them.
good.
Boss fight was actually fine, apart from the fact I had a pee.
This will be playable. Pretty good.
And I will be the creator.
It should be. Why didn't Wesker shoot him?
RE4 did it with Krauser. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Oh,
You'd be playable. Well done, Reddy. Well done, you tell him.
was that an orange action?
You're just another one of Umbrella's leftovers.
Estimated time until missile deployment.
Oh, he's taking too many paracetamol in a 24-hour period. He's going to have to get his stomach pumped.
Amoxicillin.
I'm a Lodipine. He's not very efficient at killing us, is he?
No, he had many opportunities to kill us, but didn't. So no doubt he's going to be in a later game. Wesker.
Yeah. Hubris, thy name is Wesker. It's the classic Bond villain, you know, telling us that he's a master plan instead of just killing us.
Yeah.
Jill!
You caught me narrating. What's that out of again? Incredibles?
Yes, that is.
Oh shit, it's
Ooh,
Volcano.
Volcano.
Of course it is.
airplane thing.
He's going to come back as Darth Vader.
And most don't try and suck you out of the vacuum of the sky. The plane doesn't immediately just lose altitude as well.
Exactly, yeah. It's not space.
Just still off like. But the only point is it hasn't been affected with the virus. Yeah, that's true.
Right, okay. I was chatting to Leyoric about this before we went live tonight. My Resi knowledge isn't fantastic. There's even some things about the games that I had played that I missed.
What you should do is you should watch the movies because they will clear up nothing.
Me and Tom, I've watched some of the movies. I think I've watched them all. But we talked about that on the podcast actually too. Right.
They're not great. You know.
No.
Probably don't need this red one.
Were you trying to take out rifle ammo, were you?
No, well, I've red health here that I don't really need. I don't have a huge amount of ammo.
I have rifle ammo like BB, no bar.
Of course it's going to crash, that's true.
Oh, I can't actually, won't let me. Weird.
Yeah, we'll go.
Oh, sure, there's rifle ammo here. Here.
Was it rifle? There we go.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Right. Let's kill this sumbitch.
Yep.
Why are they both lumping and we're full health?
I know. I healed myself thinking that's what it was.
Marr, Whisker, marr, Ouroboros, marr.
Of course he's alive. Ah, it's liquid.
Snake, dear brother. Liquid.
Your mistake. It's over,
Snake.
I love how Chris his entire time has been playing Halo 3 online on the Xbox 360 with that headset.
Even Ashley got infected like the other cool kids. I know, everybody's doing it.
Oh shit.
Why would you think this is a good thing to do?
I know, I absolutely ruin yourself. Final fight.
Reminds me of that game, what do you call it? You're like a superhero, but you're kind of throwing about tanks and stuff.
Infamous?
No, it was the other one came out.
Prototype?
Prototype.
Fantastic game.
Prototype, there we go. Getting tentacles in space makes perfect sense. It is. Why do you shoot your tentacles? Eh, Tomahawk? Eh?
Oh look, here's a weak spot.
Oh, does he? Oh, we're the weak spot. Run away! I can't run away.
Just flopping about there. And we got separated. Of course we did.
Yeah. Blah.
Not even words. Oh, great.
Looks like it's following you.
Yep, it's got a weak spot. Aye, brilliant, aye.
What
was I meant to do there?
Why'd you do that for? Why'd you decide to fall off a cliff?
This game's so stupid. What was I meant to do?
Not jump off a cliff.
Why can't you understand, Chris?
Change my gun I had equipped. I think I was just like meant to shoot him, maybe. Oh, jump across here. Right. Okay, that makes sense. Run away from him. That's what the plan was. Where would I have to go? Stuck here. I'm gonna. Oh.
I'm shooting him, look.
That's right.
Keeps fucking resetting me. You every time I look away. Oh shit.
I think I just have to run away from him.
Can you turn him around again so I can get his back? I have
maybe?
one bullet. No, actually, second, I have one bullet.
Jesus, he's not giving over. Relentless.
Hey, what's he at?
Those rounds aren't doing football then.
Wesker, calm yourself down a bit. I'm going to go exploring up here.
Okay. Ah, Jesus. North phase.
And another one.
Whoa, he's coming up to you now.
No! I'm the pretty one.
Well.
War and pestilence wherever you go. Everywhere. Nothing but
Is there anywhere else for me to go? Oh, there is. Hooke.
Yeah, there's like wee platforms to jump and shit. Oh. Oh, for fuck's sake, I'm nowhere near you. How am I meant to get there?
Shoot him. You have to shoot him. Shoot him!
Oh, I jumped down. Oh, bollocks, I went the wrong way. Oh, you got up.
Alright, I got up.
Good job. That wasn't for rescuing you. Terrible time to reload.
I do not have the ammo for this. Oh, do you have to punch that big boulder?
What?
Is it time to punch the boulder?
Oh, push. Right, there we go. Big Papa Hicks. That's crack. Hook.
Oh, he punched it! He punched it! Yes!
Yes!
What I'm talking about.
I am so strong.
A little bit of resi, get it done, lads. Thank you, sir.
How'd that not just float away?
I need ammo.
Gap. Oh, you had to jump the gap. Right, okay. You just ran past the herb, I think. Sorry.
Ha!
Look it.
the human race.
The meme is complete. The gods are the content. Game completed. GG's. Yeah, you tell him, Chris. I don't know if that's doing anything, man. I get you to get these back.
I don't think so. Worth a shot.
I am out of ammo. I have one bullet.
I might be able to give you bullets here.
Ooh,
Ready to run. Up here's a bit of a dead end. It's just a loop. Annoyingly.
Checkpoint?
Yep, that's good. Who's mutating again?
It's annoying you can't buy ammo.
Yeah, I agree. Stupid. Hopefully they change that in the remake. I wonder if I can give you ammo. Nope, I cannot. It doesn't give me the option for some reason.
Ooh, let's do this thing again.
Yep.
Oh, I have a shotgun. No, don't worry. I just completely forgot about a gun I had.
Right, I've trapped myself.
Knife is the only way.
Right, he's aggroed you, thankfully.
Can you buy ammo with any resi?
4?
Maybe resi 4? I don't know.
4 remake? Maybe? Not sure. Just reloading.
I don't know if
I've
this
had
is
a
even
load of
doing
bullets
anything.
in them. I feel like there's going to be a mechanic we need to do or something here. It seems quite long-winded.
Yeah.
You remember ain't good. You're all good, dude. Yeah, we're not really... Like, nothing seems to be happening here. I know we've had a checkpoint and stuff like that. I'm fucked here. I'm absolutely trapped. He's aggroed to you again, that's good. Definitely an 8 you can, right, okay. Maybe 4. I feel like 4 remake you can buy ammo, but I'm not sure. I've only played 4 remake, I didn't play OG, but I've seen
Right now I am out of ammo.
Yeah, I'm very nearly out of ammo as well. We're doing something wrong here.
Yeah, there must be like
100%.
something with the hit.
Nitrogen rounds. Let's see. Is that do anything then? They had him first.
I think
Nope,
we're in
not
that
dead.
way.
Nah, it just knocked you off it.
Yeah, I was trying to hit him with a knife to see if that would do anything. Right, what are we doing wrong here?
I know. Any tips, folks? This is silly. Take that.
Flash grenades do nothing, so we'll get rid of them.
Hand grenade, sure, but right, so rifle ammo, nitrogen rounds weren't doing anything. I'm going to remove those. Walkies up this hill to the boss arena. Shit, the yellow spots.
Right, so they pick them up at the top of the hill.
Oh, it's supposed to be in that circle instead of split up like we were. Right, okay.
We walk him up to the top of the hill and we walk him down again.
Okay.
I feel like there's something.
Thank you folks for sticking with us. I know it's a later one for us tonight, for sure.
Give me a wee second, just.
Take your time. You're all good.
Go. Go. This is the one.
Let's do it.
Oh, it starts up here. Top of the house.
Oh, so we're on the latest phase. Sweet. Oh shit, he's glowing hand, is it? Oh no. Oh, that's his back. Oh, it's not always exposed. Right, never getting somewhere. Holy sh... Oh, never mind.
Don't get too close. I think we just go straight up it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Surely Wesker be fuck, I look stupid now. A wee bit there. He's not going to pull looking like that, like.
Nah. Why did it change my weapon from the previous attempt? Seriously.
This is the run.
Never mind. I hate this game. Stop turning your shoulder, you dick. I shoot you in the back. Shoot him.
Did you get him?
Yes.
Get back from him.
Oof, just about out of range. There we go.
Right in his
He's
belly.
better
now.
way to run.
Get him on the belly.
Good ammo, of course, ammo. Fantastic.
Again, if he wasn't where's the script serum, then he'd have bodied this pair. Oh, yeah. He'd be fucked.
I think it would be a good tactic going the fact that we're back in front here.
Oh, fuck there. Right, get away from him.
Yep. There you go, shape leg, would you? Not the ammo. Shit. Saying, come on, I'm trying to dodge, Chris.
Can you get us back?
Yes. Oh, it's good. Charge up thing.
Yep.
My god, how many phases do you have, man?
Is it going to keep doing this over and over again?
Seems like it. Oh, the bolts for us.
No, definitely not.
Nice.
Yeah! Come.
Knife the exposed, perhaps? Wonder?
Guy's going again.
We're stuck in a loop here. You let go, my friend.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe if they run right up them, get the knife at the end. Oh, too close. That was too close.
I was trying to
You
get
alright?
shut off. Yeah. What's new?
Well, he's moving the different phases at least.
I suppose that's a new attack. Shit, I should have used that near you. Bollocks.
I got like 2 bullets left and minus health. Oh, I'm dead. Health
Yeah.
back? No.
Fuck off, Whisker. Where's an RPG? We need ammo.
Walk him over towards you.
I kept playing it. Oh, see the ball. See it. Jeez, if he sneezes on you, you're dead.
Yep.
Don't die, Whisker. Seriously. We are stuck in a big loop. We've been doing the same thing over and over again. We're just running out of ammo. We're missing something.
How about today?
Yeah. Oh, I have a spray.
Oh, that is.
Nice. I am basically out of ammo.
I have 1 bullet.
Looks like it's a 60 FPS problem. We're gonna.
So?
I say we YouTube the end. This is stupid.
There's no quick time events or anything.
But, like, I think damage to the bosses is like the FPS locked, but we kept the game earlier on though. Where are you? Stand still. Shit, I gave it to you. I gave you health there. I meant to use it, but I gave it to you. You're right. My fault. Yeah, we're stuck in a loop here. This is bugged. May as well let you die because we're nearly out of resource. At least if we die, I'll buy an RPG.
Yeah. Just one shot him.
Yeah. That's what I die. Just go down so we can reset. Alright. I have no bolts. That's good.
I have 0 ammunition. Oh, we did it.
Is that it? Fucking finally. Jesus.
Back and then the front should trigger QT. The QT.
Right, okay. Back me, hey. Talk about 400 bolts.
I know. GG's.
Oh. Terminator death.
I don't think he's coming back from this. Or that. Just run up and start stabbing him.
Yeah.
Stab. I think our main boss in this was the actual limitations of the tech.
Fact.
Like, there's a few
Definitely.
bosses that we struggle with, but it's more so because of the 60
Mechanics.
FPS stuff.
Yeah. Very cinematic, like this is all pretty cool here.
Yeah.
And you're right, like a couple of those fights were quite annoying, like that one. Where it's just very repetitive, but it is, yeah, it's probably is the 60 FPS. But
Yeah, it does deserve love. It's been a great game.
well,
we're still going.
I haven't really liked it, if I'm being completely honest. It's
Is that a
been
rocket
okay.
launcher on that wall, or you just happen to see me?
Use those.
One each, nice. Do we
Good
get to
that
fire them?
he's taking time to let us get these. Why would you have a conversation? Why would you not just fire it?
I know.
No, we don't even get to fire them. Bullshit. Worst game. 2 out of 10.
Oh, they missed. They went past his head. In that shot.
He's in lava. I don't think he's really surviving this. Like,
Oh, I don't
he's
know.
not
He got
gonna
back up out of it.
That was for our fallen brothers.
he can't hear you.
I think with a proper remake, this could be quite good.
Yeah.
It is getting remake treatment, though, isn't it? According to leaks.
Mhm.
I think it is getting remake treatment.
That is the rumor.
Plot
yeah.
armor in it.
Plot
I agree,
armor,
Dexter.
know.
Yep. They went past his head, so he's alive.
Those residents were evil, weren't they? No, we were the evil residents all along. Okay, no,
That's
just all
himself.
rescued. And has only barely
More
be
and
beaten.
more, I find myself wondering if it's all worth fighting for.
Does he come back? He comes back in
For a
DBD.
future without
So
fear.
he lives forever.
He's not dead.
Yeah,
Downey's still alive.
it's worth it.
GG. I assume that's it.
He needs to put in a Scottish deep fire. Oh, with a Mars bar. He would never make it out alive. The calories would kill him. That's the laugh in the moment before he dies. He just wakes up. It's just isekais over the. There we go. Isekais over the DVD.
Nice. Nicely job.
Happy days, Big John Hayes there.
Is there an after credit scene?
Come up. You could let us know. Is there an after credit scene or anything we have to wait about for? Bedtime Boys, GG's.
Bedtime Boys is right. Tom, thank you for sticking by as well. And Dexter as well. Much appreciated. And Flange, thank you.
You did a fucking G.
These are way good. Does it have an after credit scene? 5
I actually
credit
don't know.
scene? Let's see. No, it does not.
Does not. Happy days.
Fair enough, so. Don't think I can skip it though.
Nah, just let it run.
That's
in
all
the
right, just let-
background.
Tabbing out of the game though, in case it's copyright music, you know. Turbo, thank you for the GG. Much appreciated.
Much trouble. Not sure. Can't remember. But like 10 years since I played it last. It'll be fine. They defeated him. Wesker's dead. We sorted it.
We did it. So what would you give it then out of 10 out of the Resis you've played so far? How would you rank it?
I would say maybe a good 6. 6 out of 10. There
Fair.
was technical issues, but it was still a fun game. Like, I enjoyed it. And 6 isn't a bad score.
Yeah.
6 is okay. It's good.
It's not a bad score, that's true. Fair enough, so. I wasn't a Spigots fan, but there were some parts I did like, to be fair. Some of it was quite cool. Some of the action was quite cool.
The level gameplay was fun. And it was a good story.
Mm.
The technical glitches were the worst part of it. You know,
100%.
There was stuff just out of your control as a gamer that you couldn't do anything with.
From what I've seen of 6, it seems like the whole stop and shoot Resi mechanic that's in this one, that's not in 6.
Yeah.
So you can move and shoot, more fluid,
More dynamic,
that type of thing.
Yeah. That's why it's Flomash's favorite game. Like the beginning.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, the beginning was quite good. It was very hectic. Like, it was actually freaky, more so because there was so much coming at you.
I was just saying, the punch in the boulder doesn't bring it up to a 7.
That's what brought it up to a 6.
It's a victim of the time. I agree, Tomahawk. There's bones there of a good game.
Yeah, 100%.
It's my least favorite Resi I've played, I would have to say. I still don't think it's a bad game, but there's bones there of a good game, is the way I would put it.
Oh, 100%.
I'm not sure what I would score it. I probably wouldn't go 6. I would think middle of the road, 5. Wasn't terrible, wasn't great.
Yeah, that's fine.
Probably
Just for Sheva. Sheva never really came back. Did she?
Did she not?
I think so, no.
No way. She just forgot about it?
We have an option to skip now.
Ah, there we go.
Nice. You scored a lot higher in your accent than I did.
That's just for that chapter, though. Wasn't it?
Basement for Sheva. I know. Sheva should come back. Bring her back on it. Get her back.
New Game Plus? No. No, thank you.
Right. We raid
Capcom basement for Sheva. I don't know. It's 12:30. I feel dirty if we don't, like, but.
I'll go ahead and read it. Oh, that's fine.
Well, you know what? I'll read it with you because it'd be rude not. That's right. We do the usual. Read on the same person.
Who do you think? Who'll be good?
Let's have a look. Hold on.
We have Jumika. She's playing Hollow Knight.
Ooh.
Dogtopus, but we rated Dogtopus last week, didn't we?
The last time we were co-op streaming, yeah, we sure did. Let's see. Quick glance through. Jumika's probably a good shout, yeah.
But with Jumika, she's playing some Hollow Knight. Happy days. Jumika is a lovely friend of the stream and playing through Hollow Knight at the moment. So if you could stick around and say hello, it'd be much appreciated. I will be back tomorrow with more Silent Hill 2.
You sure will.
We're in a spooky hospital. You can play the hospital mission where Jill dies. We're not going to do it tonight, though.
Oh.
That's spoiler.
Right, okay. Well, that's pretty interesting. Right, the raid has been set up, folks. Thank you very much. Is she ending?
But
she's on a break screen. I'm not sure if she's ending, but sure, we'll raid in anyway. She can just pass the level on.
We'll raid in anyway. I'm going to pop on a wee raid message, but we're also going to see if you have defeated the boss tonight.
Yes. Very much so. Suspense. I want to see if we did.
There's quite a few people checking.
Watching the stream here to see.
Oh, is that the boss dead? Boss has been defeated. Everybody goes up a level.
Finally.
Congratulations,
folks.
Finally. Look at she's all leveled up. Nice one.
Folks, thank you very much. Yes, the Oracle will be back tomorrow. I'll be back on Sunday. More Dark Souls 2 DLC. Is the plan.
That is true.
We're going to beat
I will
Night.
see you lovely folks in, and I'll chat to you later. Hooke, I'll chat to you later. See you later, buddy.
All the best, folks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.